land. Launch their planes. Significantly greater range than the American aircraft out of the Americans' range.
Sometimes I have like a big part of my face that hurts really bad, like a nerve or something. Maybe for example, I don't know. I don't know why I can't say that. All the bills were ringing.
Like self-sealing fuel tanks. Americans will truly get. Lower your weight, just don't Now, all the major countries in the world are trying to keep pace with aircraft development. The Japanese are falling behind. So it's great that all these new aircraft is pretty serious. The Japanese have all these new pilots. You can hardly fly these new aircraft.
I'm buying.
Having accidents.
Listen to what we have.
Most interviews with Japanese admirals that focus on this inordinately. It was not something that was really apparent at the time, but these aircraft are being flown by Japanese pilots who have dozens of hours in the cockpit often, compared to hundreds and hundreds of hours. Rather have a much worse plane with much more skills and pilot dozens of hours in the cockpit.
55. That's the barely alive. Let go, hold this down. All the things are ringing. Let go, hold this down. The people will be singing no.
This is a sign of desperation.
Tennessee.
Now they are outnumbered by the Americans in carrying aircraft. They know they've got airfields on all these islands around Saipan, and they all have land-based aircraft. So they're going to add the land-based aircraft to the carrier-based aircraft that they have, and they may even outnumber
But now, you go sit down. They go home, they sit down. The echo was singing and they went, na 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 na. Na 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 na.
Naval officers sitting in the command center who say one of these aircraft carriers. And after they launch the plane, they start putting their watches because they know how long it should take those planes to get to the Americans. And they're expecting to hear all this chatter on the radio and start hearing reports about what's happening, what's being sunk, and all those kind of things. They look at their watches.
They go hold this down, and all the bells were ringing. They go hold this down, and all the people were singing. Na 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 na.
Shells, which instead of the aircraft having to be hit with an anti-aircraft round to explode,
I got some challenges for people.
When the aircraft are
well, firstly, does everyone know who Cassius Clay is? Oh, yeah. Cool, man. The abolitionist.
Americans are learning how to conduct aerial defense. By 1944, they've got this down to a science. They've got the aircraft carriers protected ring after ring of other warships on the very outer edges, destroying destroyers that are on big
Cassius
duty.
Marcellus Clay
So
was
that when the
fired
Japanese aircraft
Kentucky
show up
abolition.
looking for aircraft carriers, first they have to get through the defensive screen of American
He
planes.
was
Then they get through
the
them.
line of White
Then they
Hall.
run into the destroyers. Then they run
He
into
worked
the
for the
cruisers.
abolition
After that,
of
then they run
slavery.
into
He
the
was a
battleships.
founding
After
member
that,
of the
all
Republican
over
Party in
shooting
Kentucky.
and filling.
He
Look
was
at the
appointed
pictures
by
filling the
President
sky with
U.S.
black
President
puffs.
President
Every
Abraham
one of
Lincoln
those
as
involving shrapnel going out in every
U.S. Minister to
direction.
Russia. Clay was credited with gaining
The
Russian support
Japanese do not
in the ending
need
of the American Civil War. Okay. So,
these defenses to get to
what Clay
purchase
is a big lesson.
aircraft
What
carriers.
about him?
They get
So
massacred.
one day, I want some kid.
One
Some kid. I'm sure that'll be a ton of people like this.
this
So there's
unbelievable killing field says this is just like a
there's
turkey shoot.
let's say there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Really, yeah.
Turkey shoot. What you're really seeing if you
And
boil it down to
that's
brass
Kareem
tacks
Abdul-Jabbar.
is you're seeing veteran,
There's Michael Jordan.
experienced combat pilots
There's LeBron James.
feasting
There's LeBron James.
on a bunch of kids, basically. A bunch of
There's
people who
Muhammad
got
Ali.
no hours in the cockpit,
Yeah.
who can hardly
Larry
land their planes on carriers, and who are being torn to pieces.
There's Larry.
They gain
Rabbi.
almost nothing for their trouble.
But I want there to be some kid out there
Aircraft are being launched by the
becomes
Japanese
Lou
aircraft
Alcindor,
carriers. Things start to go
who's like
wrong
a famous Lou Alcindor,
and an American
who
submarine
plays basketball,
spots the wonderful
loves
brand
that
new
name.
1 month after
It's an
commission
honor.
unsinkable
And
Taiho
so then when we talk
launches a
about Lou
bunch of
Alcindor,
torpedoes
it'd
at
be
her
like, yeah,
in an
the
incident
basketball player
that deserves
who
to
played
be
for like
remembered with
the whatever team
pilot, the Japanese pilot.
in the 20,
I hope I pronounced
you
his
know,
name
blank,
properly.
blank, whatever.
Komatsu is above
then-
the Taiho, sees the torpedo wings heading for his
And then it would be
carrier,
like,
and dives his plane at one of them. And then suicidally
You mean Michael
smashes into the
Jordan's
ocean,
real name is
destroys
Michael
the torpedo
Jeffrey
that's heading
Jordan?
for his aircraft carrier, killing himself,
It's not real
destroying
name.
his plane.
Michael Jordan was born Michael Jeffrey Jordan, not his airness?
The Taiho, one of them hits it. And like so
Oh,
many
okay,
Japanese
dog.
carriers at the earlier
You kids
battles,
are gonna be dumb.
doesn't seem to do a lot of damage initially,
Why?
but stuff
They're gonna
starts
figure
to
this out.
add up. Another American submarine spots the Shokaku, which is
But even they changed him to be Larry Bird. They legend. Right.
What's kind of ironic
Yeah,
about this is the
maybe.
American submarine doctrine
Yeah,
is not meant to go after warships like the German
Larry Bird,
doctrine is meant to
Indiana.
go after merchant
Really?
ships. It's the Japanese who built these
He's a man.
massive submarines intending to utilize them against
Maybe name
warships
it
and kind of
Larry
looking
Bird,
their
Indiana.
noses down
But,
at the
yeah.
idea of attacking merchant ships.
Is it, man?
You are
It was this
two
motherfucker.
Japanese aircraft carriers
A
struck
3-point
by
contest, kid?
submarines. And the air complement of these carriers being
I would-
torn to
he'd be like-
shreds
he'd
by
be like,
American aircraft.
Firstly, just like there's a north and a south, there's a north and a south.
It is heartbreaking.
Well, yeah. He'd be like, yeah, he's a northern. He doesn't speak with a southern accent. Be like, Larry Bird, you're from Indiana. Where the fuck do you get this fucking accent? But no,
Most famous
there's a line,
Japanese name
and he's south of it, and you get a fucking southern accent there.
crushing
Do I have it?
Russians in Tsushima.
Not distinctly. I have more
And they basically
Rust Belt.
repeat Admiral Togo's
Up in
message.
Midwestern
The fate of the Empire
Chicago.
rests on this
But-
battle, and every man is expected to do his utmost.
Some southern.
Japanese version.
Interesting, it's a lot.
Horatio Nelson,
Shit,
British
short
Admiral
East Coast
Todd.
of the coffee.
They
Yeah.
do their utmost.
Coffee, tour.
Die
Oh, you didn't tell a story. Oh, good luck with that.
War at sea and naval history of World War II. Writes about the American planes fighting the Japanese and beginning to lay into them. Writes about
Alright,
two
so
forces
where were we?
collided about 90 miles from the American carriers, pushing the charging handles
Oh,
of their
so Larry
650
Bird.
caliber guns and checking their sights. The Hellcat,
In the
the
3-point contest.
Hellcat pilots nose down
He grew up
from
poor.
25,000 feet.
I used to wake up earlier than he did and practice at basketball more than he did. He just happened to be taller, but I used to wake up for 6 every morning. From 6 to 7, my dad and I would go on the run, and I'd just practice left-hand basketball.
Before the debris had hit the sea, Brewer was already on the tail of another
I'm
fight.
like,
He accounted for 2 more zeros during the pre-battle.
big shower and
Japanese
some other
planes
things.
were
But like maybe 15 minutes of shooting him.
and those that
Right?
escaped
Which is
got
an
on
hour and
these
15 minutes worth of
battleships protecting the carriers before they were shot down by
basketball.
anti-aircraft
And he
guns.
don't even an hour. This is all shooting, right? Yeah,
Some
but
along the surface of the sea
at a certain point, if you're not
exploded in black geysers of smoke and seawater. The only
abnormally
hit was
large
on the
hitter
Selfie, which lost 27 men
age,
without a reduction in her
you
fighting
really don't have to.
capacity. In all, 42 Japanese
Anyway,
planes were shot down by the
not
Tomcat, and the surface ships free. No enemy aircraft breached the carrier, and only one American was lost.
not that Dale Ellis was a rich man at all. But Larry Bird was a poor Hoosier, poor white person who, not that all Hoosiers are black, no, not even close. My favorite Hoosiers are black, the Jacksons. Anyway. Oh, is Detlef Shrimp? Sorry, Detlef Shrimp. You did very well for you. Do very well for you. Were in an episode of Parks and Recreation. You did very well. Well, you're very funny in it. Normally, these guys did a really good job. Come here, that's a good actor. So, yeah, let's do it. No, they're fucking legend.
Aircraft carriers that had been launched desperately with an understanding that the Japanese were too far away for them to hit and get back to their carriers. So they limped back almost out of gas.
The players today, they don't do the slam dunk contest. They don't do the 3-point contest. Why? They don't want to get embarrassed. And they would. Why? Well, I understand the slam dunk not wanting to do that. They say they want to do it because they don't want to get injured. I understand that, but it's a big part of the game. And if you market yourself well during that, you sell so many more shoes and jerseys, posters. If you had a poster of doing every single one of the slam dunk contests, you'd be like the most legendary slam dunker of all time, perhaps. More than Vince Carter. I mean, at least for that tournament. Here we go. Boom. Look up. He's already halfway over to sign the check. He's already fucking got the pen clicked. He's already done. Really? He doesn't have a lot of money, dude. And some slight damage to a battleship with a single Japanese bomb was found. That is crushing. Decisive. Not a decisive battle. War when it's over. Fighting with Saipan is still just getting started. If Saipan falls, all of a sudden Japan and its homeland. Oh, it's Joe Elliott. No, it was. Oh, that didn't win it. You watch. He's already got that pen click. What? It is a preview of what Cold War bombers will look like in quantum bomber technology was. 5 years before this time, I can imagine what it might be like to see. So, I bet you Dale Ellis has less money than Larry Bird does. Oh, especially now. Dale Ellis would be a investment company or something. Hey, Dale Ellis Investments. I came in second in the 1988 3-point contest to Larry Legend. He got his city named after him. What the fuck do I get? It's an investment company. Come invest with Dale Ellis Investments. A subsidiary of Wu-Tang Clan. Wu-Tang ain't nothing to fuck with. A warning as they inch closer, as the airfields get closer to Japan, and as the range of these bombers increases. Watch, he's sucking dick. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got them all, and the extra ball, which I don't think they should count. Watch this. He's already signing that fucking check. He shoots that. Live life with the fucking confidence that Larry Bird had when he threw that last one up.
sources that hardly
Why? Because this fucking ball hasn't even.
something like this is a major endeavor.
Look at
So
this.
one
This is
would
a great fucking picture.
must
This
be
is a fucking great picture.
more, high stakes, right?
Larry
The Japanese
fucking Legend
here at this
is
operation,
over
it should
here.
go against the Chinese, should be
And
decisive.
this ball is still midair, and he's got that fucking thing counted. That number one. That should be his like symbol. Really? Yeah, because he doesn't have like a Larry Bird stuff. Oh yeah, you want to look like Larry Bird? Yeah, sure
so
do.
that the B-29s can't hit them from China. By the time it's over, the Japanese lose another 100,000 soldiers. They inflict something like north of 300,000 more casualties.
You want to go into our fucking blade? I'm doing a dunk and Jack that fucking dunk. They don't fucking have one. Okay? I see how.
Another attack.
Oh, baby.
There
you go.
Fighting in New Guinea has never stopped. In fact, there's Japanese are still
Third time.
Australians there. And the disease, which we really have not done justice to, is killing and incapacitating more Japanese.
They call it a long distance shootout.
Combat many times more casualties than the combat. Dysentery, many other infections starting to take a toll on allied attacks and soldiery. So this is the theater. Starved to death, disease kills more, incapacitates far less than combat. This is not how it is on most of the other fronts. It makes the Asia Pacific different. And at this time period, the island of death is really living up to the hype as far as the Japanese post-war reputation was concerned. And after MacArthur promises no more Bunas, because the Buna campaign was vicious, he and the Australians managed to sort of bypass most of the Japanese, cut them off from supply, and leave more than 100,000 Japanese soldiers on New Guinea starving to death. Dying of disease. And then, as we said, you have the Battle of the Philippine Sea, which just ended in Great Marianas Turkey shoot. The Japanese lose 3 carriers, hundreds of planes, and barely scratch the Americans. It's a sign that the war is beginning to enter a new phase, a phase where, just like in Europe, actually, the Axis have lost the war, but they're going to continue fighting. The last year was the most horrible, but it's also a time when there is no doubt as to who's going to win it, which creates a circumstance that just adds to a sort of a tragic overlay to the whole thing, right? It's one thing to die for the cause, but if this is a lost cause already, it reminds me of something like the last stands all throughout history. Think of Thermopylae, think of the Alamo.
Look at that.
Texas, where an overwhelmed amount of volunteers at a little church or a mission in Texas get overwhelmed by the Mexican military that outnumbers them many times over. Something like Thermopylae or the Alamo is
Why do you
somewhat
like that?
because eventually the people
Here's a
that
beautiful thing about college and the scholarship system. It sucks, but
many times over.
I could take some kid
The Mexicans in a war, the
from
Greeks defeat the Persians
anywhere.
eventually. In this
Almost.
part of the conflict, the Japanese are going to fight the equivalent.
They could be
Alamo after Alamo,
a man,
after
a
Alamo,
woman,
Thermopylae
whatever they want
Thermopylae
to
after
be,
Thermopylae,
non-binary,
but there's never going to
or
be
person
an
of color,
angel moment.
person of color, not person
After
of
the
color,
Philippine Sea
person
is
of
over,
color,
the
person of
Japanese
color,
forces on
that's your
Saipan
people
and
said
Tini
person of color,
are on
person
their
of
own.
color,
There will be no
or
reinforcement. There will be no
whatever.
supply. Their job is to die.
But if they
and take
played
as
a
many of
sport,
the allies
they went to college, and so there's a connection there.
Now,
And so
we should
I basically know
remember
something
that
about
this
every
was
fucking.
always
I got
part
fucking
of
arrested. Thank God I didn't get arrested. I got fucking pulled over
But
for
the Japanese were going to have these island
could have been a
outposts,
DUI.
and they were going to make the allies take
multiple
them
ways
back.
in
And
fucking
the assumption
Knoxville,
was the
Tennessee. Went to
Japanese
University of
would be
Tennessee,
willing to
Survivor
take
C.
more
My
down,
big
but
dude.
the allies would take,
Shout out to that fucking cop
inflicting the
there.
pounding.
Gave us directions to
That's already been put to the test on a number of these places: New Guinea, the Solomons, Tarawa, the Gilberts, the Marshalls. But Saipan begins a different segment of this war. Because on Saipan are a bunch of Japanese civilians. As you get closer to Japan, you start running into women, and children. And this complicates matters greatly and adds a whole different
Not Joe. I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Not Joe. Not Joe. I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Not Joe.
Were thoroughly indoctrinated by Japanese propaganda to believe, for example,
when I'm in Cotton Joe, I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Joe. When I'm in Cotton Joe, I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from? Cotton Joe.
It's the soldiers. You see this play out tragically on Saipan and on Saipan most all of them. And what happens on that island so shocks the intimate calculation. This is what it's like when an outer Japanese
handsome and strong.
An army brought conservatively to 27th division. Then the Marines in the 27th division began advancing up the island side, which is about 12 or 15 miles long. Longest being it's like 30 miles long. And Indonesia is advancing up the island side. Almost a American nature service flight, which Japanese military was almost hate each other sometimes. It's an open warfare practically. The Americans, though not at this point, Marines are relying on the army and then decide that the army is unreliable. All hell breaks loose. Something becomes big enough problem to go all the way up to the American high command back in Washington, D.C. and breaks out into open discussion in the American media with some newspaper outlets citing the Marines, other newspaper outlets citing the army. What happened is this. The Marine forces on Saipan were on both sides of the army. The army was the center, and the army was connecting the two
Look, the boy, the kid, and Serenity 9 are flirting.
What that meant was
that one chick and the boy, the kid. And then she'll make it out with Serenity. That one chick's gotta get out. So, what? Are you done?
Insufficiently aggressive. Then he went to his own admiral and demanded that he be fired. This other army commander. And then the admiral fired him.
Super big.
And all hell breaks loose. When that happens, the army not happy with that, as you might imagine, getting in each other's faces. I mean, that's really quite astounding.
Like, yeah.
Many of the commentators I was reading would either take the Marine side or the Army side.
A lot right here.
Plenty of them
like
said that a lot
temple
of
or
this
something.
disagreement stemmed from a
But
very
the nervous,
different idea of tactics and
raw
doctrine. The Marines traveled lightly, advanced quickly, were willing to suck up more casualties in the hopes that by ending a campaign,
Oh shit! Look at that one, yo.
the overall casualties would be
That
lessened.
worked.
The Army was much more deliberate. They preferred to wait for things like artillery support. They would hunker down, at night, and sometimes retreat to a better perimeter. They were trying to save lives, right? Use maneuver, use technology, use air and artillery to lessen the amount of casualties. But what this meant was the 27th Division, connecting the two Marine divisions, was not moving as quickly, and this was upsetting.
Every time you hear this song, you have to masturbate. You can't just be like, oh, I masturbate from the beginning of it. No, it's got to be.
All these islands have different threats, as we've been saying all along. On Saipan, it's
I don't have time to do all these stupid ass.
riddled with them. And Japanese soldiers will hide in these caves, and if the caves are not dealt with, they will come out after Americans move past them and attack them in the flank and rear, snipers and all those kinds of things. The problem that the Allies and the Americans find out, though, is that these caves sometimes have civilians in them, and the civilians tend to be in the places where you least expect them. And This makes matters more complicated and tragic. Army Sergeant John Sider is quoted in Matthew A. Rizzel's book, The Things Our Fathers Saw, and describes one of these caves that they come across, and the Americans had Japanese Americans with them, who they would often use as translators to communicate with the Japanese soldiers, and would say, hey, come out of the caves. And that's the story Sergeant John Sider relates. He says, quote, we had this cave, and we had 2 Japanese Americans, guys from the Hawaiian Islands. They didn't carry guns or anything, but they were smart. They walked right into the cave and talked to the Japanese soldiers. They weren't going to give up. Our 2 came out and told us, and then they went back in and told them they had 5 minutes before we were going to shell them. Then they went back in and told them they had 3 minutes. All of a sudden, we heard the screaming of women and children. We told them to let the civilians out. The Japanese wouldn't let them out. That was their protection. So it came down to ... They blew the cave up. How many people were killed, we don't know. But that cave was closed. They exploded it with dynamite. End quote. In Japan at War and Oral History, Haruko Tayakoke Theodore F. Cook interview a Japanese veteran on Saipan who has a truly Reader's Digest type adventure. Maybe that's not the right way to describe it. Trying to survive the American assault on Saipan, and eventually he finds himself in a cave like the one the American just described that they had to blow up. Veteran, his name was Yamauchi Takeo, and he describes finding this cave and running in it with a buddy for protection, but there were already people in the cave, including civilians. You begin to see the tragedy and perhaps a preview of what a war against the Japanese home islands might turn out to be like. And the veteran says, quote, that sailor and I fled to the very northern tip of the island where we found a cave to crawl into. Inside were a Japanese non-commissioned officer. I thought he must be a master sergeant. That's the way he spoke. Several soldiers and some Japanese women with babies, maybe 20 of them all together. It was pitch dark at night. I could hear their voices, babies crying. The sailor and I sat in the corner in the darkness without talking to anyone else there. Immediately above that cave ran a road. American forces were all over the place. The sergeant insisted that the babies' cries would alert the Americans. Kill them yourself, or I'll order my men to do it. That's the sergeant speaking. Several mothers killed their own children, the veteran says. Now, he talks about the Americans' attempt to get them to come out. Quote, now the Americans began to broadcast surrender advice over loudspeakers. From the sea, Japanese forces, throw down your arms. We will protect the honor of those who fought hard and who give themselves up. We have water. We have food. Their Japanese, he says, was a little shaky. They said that they would resume firing after a fixed interval. That was the first time I heard an American call to surrender. But I feared that if I surrendered within sight of our own men during daylight, I might be shot in the back. End quote. He then tells a heart-wrenching story of a civilian teenager. Many of the civilians had cyanide and they were killing themselves. And he says that this teenager's whole family took the cyanide and killed themselves, but seemingly gave her something that was fake so that she would survive and live. And he said that he had to tell her, you can't kill yourself. Your parents tried to spare your life. They say that things like war and any big historical story, there's thousands of little individual stories added together like a mosaic. This is truly tragic, and yet at the same time, especially in the years after the war, one would hear a story like this and say, well, they asked for it, they started the war, and all those kinds of things, which is understandable, and yet at the same time, one's tempted to suggest that there are a lot of innocent, blameless, or just pawns on all sides, trapped in this kind of matrix, if you will. If you can't spare some sympathy for Japanese civilians And we spare some for the Truman, people of Saipan, there before the Japanese even arrived after the First World War. Thousands upon thousands, maybe tens of thousands of those people will die and suffer terribly, caught in the caves while the Americans and the Japanese fought it out. I wrote a book called Saipan, Moral Histories of the Pacific Wars, and he recounts story after story told by Chamorro people who survived this affair, and the loved ones that they lost along the way, and the family tragedies that unfolded in front of them. It's grim stuff. As the Americans fight their way up the island, the Japanese can see the writing on the wall in his book, Combined Fleet Decoded. Author John Crum's wrote another Japanese diary, this one by Soji Hikara Kazumi. And he's writing this, it's thought on July 4th, and his diary entry is a testament to most Japanese by this time are clearly aware of that the end of the game is in sight, and he writes, quote, "The decision to make a final stand has at last been announced. Only Japanese officers and men fight under such hopeless conditions. The spirit of Yamato, however, is rendered powerless by the overwhelming strength and the heavy weapons of the enemy. The island of Saipan is too small. It is even difficult for me to hide myself, and I'm only 5 feet tall. Our last day will be here. Nothing to regret. Nothing we can do. This is fate. It had to go this way." On July 6th, the general in charge, Sato's his name, will climb onto a rock, have a last meal, according to some anyway, with canned crab meat and sake, and then slit his belly with a knife or a sword, while an adjutant behind him waits for the proper moment to shoot him in the head. This is followed by Admiral Nagumo's suicide. The victor in Pearl Harbor and the loser in Midway will dispense with any of the ceremonial protocol and simply shoot himself with a pistol, at least according to survivors. The day after these two commanders end their lives, it's the turn of the rank and file to do so. And we've been calling these charges, these basically suicidal charges by the Japanese, bonsai charges, which is what the Americans call them, because the Japanese soldiers would often yell bonsai as one of the things that they would scream on the way in to attack. But the Japanese, especially here on Saipan, are taking part in what the Japanese term is a gyokusai, and that means the breaking of the jewels. And they will drink a lot of liquor and get to a point where they're actually sinking before thousands of them will explode onto the American lines. This was not totally unexpected. In Matthew A. Brazil's book, The Things Our Fathers Saw, U.S. soldier Nick Ronaldo says, quote, "I remember it rained like hell that night, and the water was running down the slope into our foxholes. I had to use my helmet to keep bailing out, you know. The night before the bonsai, I woke up that morning, and oh, Jesus Christ, they, the Japanese, got above us, and they were giving us plunging fire, shooting right down into the foxholes because they were high enough to look down. Lieutenant Gower, he was my platoon leader. He was regular army. He was a good man. He called us together, the squad leaders. He said, I think we're getting hit with a bonsai. We're going to have to pull back. End quote. Let me point out that this happens like so many of these major Japanese attacks at night.
That was Thanksgiving.
Holy Jesus, there was howling and screaming. They had naked women with spears, stark naked. They took bayonets and strapped them on the end of a pole, and they came screaming at us, figuring, hey, the good-hearted Americans aren't going to shoot a woman, you know? Horseshit. There were so many of them, like cockroaches coming out of the woodwork. We had to pull back.
Really?
End quote.
I don't know who likes that.
I have a book on saipan, and it spends something like 30 or 40 pages covering this event with 3,000 to 4,000 Japanese fighters swarming over the American front lines, forcing the Americans to pull back. There are plenty of accounts of Japanese sword-wielding soldiers who are hacking to death wounded Americans who can't get away, chopping off heads. It's medieval at times.
Why do people only have cranberry sauce one day out of the year?
But it's also
People have applesauce. I have fucking
in his book, The Nobility of Failure,
Classic
Tragic
wax.
Heroes in the History of Japan. Author Ivan Morris describes this specific incident and puts it in the larger context.
And nobody's
of
ever
the
like,
Japanese
man,
suicidal attack, the bonsai
it's
charges,
fucking
the
May.
Kyokusai
I could really go for
incidents.
some cranberry sauce.
It was
No.
not only pilots or even military men
Also,
who responded with suicidal desperation to the agonizing course of
It's
events.
amazing.
In battle after battle, from the Aleutians to Guadalcanal, Japanese soldiers avoided surrender by participating in fierce suicide attacks, which the Americans described as bonsai
Really?
charges.
Yeah, mint jelly
Probably the
on
most
fucking
fearsome
mutton.
scenes of all took place on the island of Saipan in July 1944. When organized military resistance became
Grandma
impossible,
ain't got nothing
some
on this
3,000
mutton.
Japanese
Grandma
soldiers,
Mima ain't
most of
got
them armed
nothing
with
on
nothing
this
but bayonets or sticks, charged into the concentrated
it
machine gun
mutton?
fire of the American Marines and were mown down to the last man. At times, the Japanese corpses were piled so high that the Marines had to move their machine gun emplacements into an open line of fire as new waves surged forward. A particularly macabre note was provided by a contingent of wounded soldiers, many of them swathed in bandages and leaning on the shoulders of their comrades, who staggered out of the hospitals and infirmaries to take part in the last suicide attack. Subsequently, he writes, entire units of Japanese soldiers knelt down in rows to be decapitated by their commanding officers, who then in turn committed harakiri. Hundreds of other soldiers shot themselves through the head, or more frequently, exploded themselves with hand grenades. As the Marines advanced through the blood-drenched island, they witnessed one mass suicide
Lamb
after
chops,
another.
that's why. Lamb, London broil. So you like mint jelly and lamb chops? Really, yeah.
It was Army units that were initially struck by this charge, but after they were overrun and forced to pull back,
One day you'll be able to have
the
pork chops or chicken. Then when you can't get
artillery
applesauce,
units
you
behind
get
them that were composed of Marines
it's fucking applesauce and
finally
pork chops.
stopped.
Really?
People
Applesauce
and
and pork chops.
typists
Oh my
and
god. You
cooks
could also have
and
cranberry
people
sauce.
like that who'd been armed hastily and picked up weapons to try to beat off this
You
terrible
guys have
attack.
cranberry sauce.
And then it was
Oh, you're right.
the
We
field
did.
was
Guess we accept having a photo.
American casualties
Exception.
was in excess of 900
Alright,
killed,
are you done back down?
and a ton of medals given out, including multiple medals of honor, most of them posthumously. It was the worst Japanese bonsai attack on Kyokusai of the war. The desperation is clear for all to see. After the bonsai charge, the Americans continued to move up the island, compressing the Japanese into the northern tip of the island, where there was a more than 800-foot tall cliff with jagged rocks in the sea below, and that's where the final tragedy of occurs, right in front of America's watching eyes as the soldiers saw it all unfold, and it was filmed. You can go see the tragic footage of this, where Americans slack-jawed watched the civilians, the Japanese civilians, but also natives from the island, begin to commit mass suicide. Began from island fighting. Quote, Saipan was declared secure on July 9th, but the final horror came after the fighting was over. At the northern tip of the island lay Marpi Point, a plateau some 833 feet above a shore of jagged rocks. And there, hundreds of Japanese civilians joined the few remaining troops in an orgy of self-destruction. Despite loudspeaker assurances that the victors would treat captives well, parents threw their children off the cliffs and jumped after them. Whole families waited and swam out to sea to drown themselves. One group of 100 Japanese bowed to Marines watching from a cliff. Then they stripped, bathed, donned fresh clothing, and spread a Japanese flag on a rock. One man distributed hand grenades, and one by one they pulled the pins and held the grenades against their bellies. And there's also photographs of Japanese families who were wavering and didn't know exactly how to begin, and hidden Japanese snipers from a distance would make up their minds for them and shoot them down. There are so many bodies offshore that the Americans can't even bring ships in because they're having to plow their way through the human wreckage. This book, The Rising Sun, author John Tolan actually has described too upsetting to even talk about of the ordeal that these survivors who didn't die in these suicide attempts live through. I mean, what's it like when you're in a cave with your father, your mother, your siblings, including some as young as toddlers, and they have to have a discussion about what's about to happen. Stories related by a survivor who did not die. The father and the mother have the conversation about how they're going to go to a happy place and all these things. I mean, it is a human tragedy writ large. And it's clear from all the accounts that it melts the hearts of even the adversaries who would call this a race war or annihilation war of hatred. But the Marines and the Army personnel who witnessed this, they know they're looking at a tragedy, and Tolan tells the story of one American officer watching this with tears streaming down his face, saying, "Why do the Japanese kill themselves like this?" No one knows exactly how many civilians on Saipan have died through suicide or killed in war. Casualty figures over the entire Pacific campaign can be wildly from one source to another. The reason why is so many people disappeared, caves get blown up and people inside, Japanese soldiers turn up years later, suicides happen in remote places, and the jungle tends to conceal a lot. I've seen civilian death totals between 20 and 25,000 people. Japanese and Chamorro, those are devastating casualties for an island this size, right? 12, 15 miles long, 20 to 25,000 dead civilians. It's a nightmare scenario as the war goes on, and you're going to run into more and more populated islands every step of the way towards the Japanese homeland. As far as Japanese casualties, those vary too. On Saipan, between 27 and 29,000 Japanese dead, usually the numbers you see. American dead and missing, well, Saipan's about 3,500, a little bit more than 3,500, maybe American dead, a couple hundred missing, between 13 and 16,000 wounded. Remember that the invasion of Tinian happens right at the same time, and the invasion of Guam happens right afterwards. Guam is another tough fight, but on Tinian, it's about 320 Americans who die, but it's like 5,500 Japanese, and you start to see how much the kill ratio is turning against the Japanese in a way that you rarely see in modern war. 10 to 1 ratio is becoming pretty common. And on Guam, the Japanese lose, and I've seen anywhere from, again, wildly different figures in the Encyclopedia of Military History. It says 10,000 men, but many sources will say the Japanese lost more than 18,000 men on Guam. The Americans lose about 3,000 dead, about 7,000 wounded. The entire operation, Operation Forager, if you total it up, the Japanese lose about 67,000 men out of 71,000 originally. These numbers represent almost total destruction of Japanese forces. You don't see this anywhere else. It's a sign of how committed they are to the cause, and how unlikely it is that you can break their morale and get them to surrender. It's going to be a fight to the death. And after Saipan and Guam and Tinian are through, the Japanese know, at least the more insightful amongst their leadership, that the war is decided, but it's not over yet. One of the naval chiefs of staff says after Saipan falls that hell is about to descend upon us. They know that the B-29s are coming, and before the islands are even free of Japanese defenders, Navy engineers, the Seabees, come in and start building the airfields that the B-29s will use to attack the Japanese homeland. On July 18th, the military leader Tojo resigns. He's forced to by the emperor and the other elements in the government. 2 days later, a bomb goes off in the German Empire. Is that a good way to call it? The Nazi state. And officers under Adolf Hitler had tried to blow him up in the July 20th plot. So by July 20th, Hitler's wounded in the bombing attack. Mussolini, as we said, is already a shadow of his former self and falling. Tojo's gone now, so of the big three, only Hitler's left. The successors to Tojo in Japan begin to try to figure out a way to cobble some sort of peace together so the worst can be avoided. But they have a lot of headwinds working against them, including the emperor himself, who, in Herbert P. Biggs's Hirohito, suggests that he's going to die fighting. And Japan begins to prepare for this sort of last-ditch stand on the home islands that will make use of every man, woman, and child in Biggs Wright's quote. On August 4th, the new cabinet decided to arm virtually the entire nation and have all subjects begin military training with bamboo spears. In workplaces and schools throughout the country, Hirohito, the emperor, formally confirmed the new preparations for defense against the forthcoming enemy offensives at his imperial conference 2 weeks later. Emphasis was to be placed on air defense, fighting the enemy in the interior rather than at the water's edge, and the rapid development of, quote, sure victory weapons, end quote, which meant the large-scale production of so-called body smashing or special attack weapons designed to, quote, end quote, exchange the life of the crew or the pilot for a specific military achievement, end quote. Suicide weapons. That's where we are by this time of the war. We have been saying all through this series that the Japanese are like everyone else, only more so. Well, in June 1940, when Winston Churchill was afraid that the Germans were about to invade another island nation, just like Japan, but in this case Britain, he gave a famous speech. A speech that, well, might have been written by the Japanese emperor himself. He said, quote, "We shall defend our island whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." End quote. He also had quipped, "Remember, you can always take one with you," meaning every Briton civilian could take a German soldier with them, and that would eat up the whole German army because there were so many civilians. It sounds like the Japanese taking an inspiration from Churchill's playbook here, because in this final year of the war, that's their plan. The civilians are training with bamboo spears to make it a reality.
The Hoover Institution report shows more than 150 corporations that were headquartered in California.
If you think the show you just heard is worth $1, Dan and Ben would love to have it. $1 a show, it's all we ask. Go to dancarlin.com for information on how to donate to the show.
Wrath of the Khans, Punic Nightmares, Apache Tears, and of course, Ghosts of the Ostron. Just a few of the classic hardcore history titles available from dancarlin.com. Every true fan has heard these favorites. Hey, they make great gifts too. Coming up in part 6, the final installment of this series, Hallelujah, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, MacArthur's return to the Philippines, kamikazes, and atomic war, an Armageddon of the sort that has rarely been seen in modern warfare. All this and more. Part 6 of Supernova in the East, which you're about to hear is part 6 of a 6-part series on the second world in Asia Pacific. If you have not heard the segments previous check those out. You probably want to hear this in order, but there's a few of you out there who don't care about that sort of stuff, in which case, well, catch up and join us for part 6 of the light and airy story that is Supernova in the East.
December 7th,
It's history.
1941, a date which will live in infamy.
It's hardcore history. Knowledgeable about the Second World War, and many people are. It's one of those subjects that fascinates human beings in the world over, understandably so. People who are aficionados of the Second World War knows that the rhythm of the Second World War reminds you of an opera, a musical theater production. The end is going to be like the end of the world, a Ragnarok, a Regatta, and the whole last year of the war is whipping yourself up like a roller coaster going uphill, waiting for that giant dip where you're building up to that horrific ending. The last year of the Second World War is the worst year of the Second World War. And the kind of numbers that demonstrate that are, for example, casualties, killings. Look at the German deaths, for example, in January 1945. That's a month this month. The Germans will have more than 400,000 of their soldiers, maybe closer to 450,000 of their soldiers, die in that month alone. For comparison purposes, that is more military deaths than the United States suffered, all branches of service, all cause of mortality for the whole war. Historian Neil Ferguson says the German military loses more soldiers in the last year of the war than the entire rest of the war put together. Some of the latest estimates of casualty numbers suggest the Germans were losing, on average, 10,000 soldiers every day in 1945. So from January 1st to May 8th, the war ended, and you're 10,000 a day on average. That is almost twice as many people as the United States lost at the Battle of Antietam, which many military historians consider to be the worst day in U.S. military history, and the Germans were getting a day after day. If you think to yourself, and if this would be totally understandable, who cares? Right? The Germans are reaping what they sowed. That would be fine, except it's hardly just the Germans. In his book, War's End, author Gideon Rose says that every month in 1945, between 100,000 and 250,000 non-combatants in Asia were dying, again every month, due to the actions of Japanese forces. These are data points, but you have to add all the other data points up too and see the conveyor belt of death, the factory assembly line of human destruction that's going on in 1945, or really the last year of the war. I mean, you don't have to really imagine too much to just know that the Holocaust is going on during this time period in Europe, and people are dying in those camps every day. So every day the war continues, that tally goes up reliably. I'm reminded of a band, the MC5, in the late 1960s, early 1970s. They wrote a song which I think is about the Vietnam War, and it's entitled "You Being Lawnmower." And to me, the imagery, as horrific as it is, works better for the Second World War, and especially the end of the Second World War, than it does for Vietnam. A lawnmower that cuts human beings, instead of blades of grass, or an assembly line that's reliably heading towards a furnace or a chopping machine with people on it. And when the lead singer would say the words the human being lawnmower, he would emphasize what was going on by then saying chop, 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 chop. Chop, 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 chop. That's what's going on in the last year of the war. So why is the last year of the war still going on? Neil Ferguson, in his book, The War of the World, quotes an aide to U.S. General Omar Bradley, who was fighting the Third Reich in Europe. And the aide made this statement. Ferguson says at the end of 1944, and the statement was, quote, if we were fighting reasonable people, they would have surrendered long ago, end quote. But they're not fighting reasonable people, clearly. They're fighting a fanatical regime in the Third Reich, which is committed to going down with the ship and taking the entire country down with them. And the Japanese, we've already pointed out, to outside observers who are not Japanese, it's always looked fanatical. Hitler and his cohorts know that they're not surviving the post-war period. Regardless, they're all going to hang at the end of a rope. So maybe that influences their decision to take everything down with them. His propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, famously said, if we have to leave, we'll close the door behind us with a slam that all the world will hear. Meaning that all the German civilians need to go with them. And the Japanese situation, their military is planning for a last-ditch stand on the home islands. If it comes to that, the army thinks they can put 2.5 million Japanese soldiers into Japan's built-up cities, and then add to those numbers with a ton of civilians that, as we said in the last segment, are training with bamboo spears by this time, and make life impossible for an invading army. What's the goal? What's the end game? Well, both the Germans and the Japanese are hoping to inflict a last big blow against their enemies that causes their enemies to rethink the peace terms. Because as even a cursory understanding of the Second World War makes clear, the peace terms are unconditional surrender. And the reason we know that is the Allies made an attempt to broadcast this, make it known to everybody. The terms are you give them, and then we decide what we're going to do to you. Now, this is controversial. After all, if the terms of surrender are going to be that harsh, the Axis powers are going to fight longer than they otherwise might, which means the human being lawnmower, the conveyor belt of destruction continues longer, the Holocaust goes on longer, the Asian civilians die, more day. I mean, just, it's controversial. But there's an attitude, if you look at the sources, that you need an unconditional surrender if you're going to finally end this recurring problem. The Germans especially are seen as a recurring problem. My stepfather, who was half German by ancestry, had said, look at the German history over the past 100 years, right? The Franco-Prussian War, the First World War, the Second World War. That is 3 generations of German youth going off to fight in wars that destabilized the international system. Franklin Roosevelt thought it was Prussian or Junker militarism that was at fault, and that countries needed to have finally this tendency rooted out of them. And to do that, a free hand would be necessary. You couldn't have some sort of deal, like the deal that ended the First World War. You needed the ability to remake these societies, to finally end the repeat offender status of some of these places, right? It would upset the peace of the world. So for many people, it was this view that the entire sacrifice of all 3 of those wars, but especially the Second World War, would be in vain if it didn't end the right way. There's a quote from Assistant U.S. Secretary of State Breckinridge Long that's used in Gideon Rose's book, where he says, quote, we are fighting this war because we did not have an unconditional surrender at the end of the last one, end quote. It's controversial, though, and people like Winston Churchill sometimes seem to vary in his views that you find on whether or not he was for it or open to some sort of conditional peace. In his book series, The Second World War, which cannot be taken as gospel truth. You take it with a grain of salt because he's bolstering his own post-war image, but he knows that unconditional surrender is controversial, so he tries to defend it, and he says that they tried to sit down and come up with conditional terms, right? If it was not going to be unconditional, what should the surrender terms be? And he wrote, quote, "They looked so terrible when set forth on paper, and so far exceeded what was in fact done, that their publication would only have stimulated German resistance. They had, in fact, only to be written out, to be withdrawn." End quote. We should also recall that there were political reasons in the Allied alliance for doing this too. The Soviets were very suspicious that the Western Allies would cut a separate deal with Germany and sort of leave them in the lurch. An announced public pledge for an unconditional surrender helped bind all the Allies together in a united cause, right? No one's going to make a separate peace. But it meant the war would go on longer. And both Japan and Germany were hoping for some sort of last-ditch punch in the nose that would wake the Allies up to the fact that this war could continue for years if you didn't come up with a better peace deal. I mean, that's really what something like the Battle of the Bulge, the Second Battle of the Ardennes in 1944, that could be the only reason to do that. Because there was no war-winning element to that. The whole point was to do such damage and maybe have a whole bunch of Allied troops sort of surrounded and endangered so you could maybe bargain with them. And in Japan, they were continually looking for the last great battle that would help wake the Allies up to the idea that unconditional surrender was a bridge too far. When last we spoke, we were talking about the Battle of Saipan in July 1944. Well, the Japanese Navy had thought that the war had been decided. Some of the naval experts after the battle had calmed down, and most of the battle midway, in the Japanese war journal at Imperial Headquarters, Richard Frank's book, Downfall, they were very open. And this is official that the war was over in terms of who was going to win. And it said, quote, "We can no longer direct the war with any hope of success. The only course left is for Japan's 100 million people to sacrifice their lives by charging the enemy to make them lose the will to fight." End quote. That is an amazing statement. We will sacrifice all the people in this country to get a better deal than unconditional surrender. And what was it that the Japanese really were holding out for? The emperor. They were worried that an unconditional surrender might mean that the emperor and the entire imperial system would be tossed out. This was something they could not live with. What's more, the idea that the emperor might be treated as a war criminal and might be hung or something after the war was intolerable to a ton of Japanese people, including a ton of civilians. I mean, remember, there's a decent number of Japanese folk who consider this person a living god. His voice has never even been heard by the public. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that makes this an almost superhuman figure, and the idea that the country might have to lose, there really weren't 100 million people in Japan, it's more like 70 or 75 million, but I mean that you might have to sacrifice that to keep one guy on the throne? Wow, that's, well, if we were fighting reasonable people, it would have been over already. This is not reasonable. I read a couple of different takes on this that suggested it was a lot more than the emperor. This is the imperial system, which includes a lot of what we call the oligarchy or the old guard. There's a lot of people who have a stake in the imperial system, and they would all be thrown to the wolves if this went away. But it would seem to be the kind of thing where you're going to keep the human being lawnmower operating at breakneck speed to keep a single guy from the gallows after the war, maybe. The problem Japan has is different than Germany, because one of the things we said at the end of the last segment was that the famous plot against Adolf Hitler on July 20th, Operation Valkyrie, where a bomb exploded in a meeting room, attempting to take Hitler out. Well, that's in a get rid of the fanatic in chief, right? I mean, as I said, if we were fighting reasonable people, the war would be over long ago. But in Germany, you have to get rid of the unreasonable person at the top to have a chance to do that. Japan's government's very different. It's hard to put your finger on who's in charge. I mean, we dealt with this extensively in the first segment of the program, pointing out that Japan's system was one that outsiders certainly, but even insiders sometimes could have a tough time figuring where the buck stops. Author E.W. Toll had a line that just, I think, was a perfect summation of that. He said, the same institutional defects that had produced Japan's irrational decision to launch the war in 1941 now prevented a rational decision to end it. And S.C.M. Payne, in his book The Wars for Asia, 1911-1945, had said that Japan's government had been called a government by acquiescence, or a system of irresponsibility. And he said, quote, because if everyone is responsible for policy, then policy formation becomes anonymous, so that no one is actually held accountable. The primary value emphasized in decision-making was a consensus reached through informal procedures, end quote. A consensus that required the most die-hard fanatical elements of the military being on board, and at least the army was not. And this, by the way, is why everybody spent so much time talking about the 19th century development of the Japanese constitution.
That's really
To get us to the Second World War, because the Second World War is where major things just go. It's almost like a tragic flaw.
That's getting when we're
It was built into the Japanese system a long time ago, and it only comes out when the system's under massive stress, like, a world war. But the fact that the Army and Navy, for example, have outsized army control tends to bend the decision making in a more hard line sort of way. And people who want to talk about peace actually put their own lives in danger to do so. So in both Germany and Japan, as the war starts to grind into the last year, anybody who tries to bring up the idea of peace, who suggests that the war may be lost,
She's really kind.
enemies of the regime in Germany. Last year, between 10 and 20,000 people I read were hung or executed in some other way, soldiers and civilians alike, on charges of
Don't put natural
defeatism.
Get an
In Japan, various regions of the story says that the military was watching the people and jailed some people for high-level defeatism, as it was called. And Saburo Inoue, in his book The Pacific War, talked about how careful those words translated words. Peace advocates in the government had to be that they faced assassination or a coup. He blames the army, but that's who he blames for other things. It might be that even bringing up what might be a rational question, like, do we have to have Armageddon? Is that the way this whole thing has to go? Could get you charged as an enemy of the state. In a place like Germany, could get you hung. So rationality isn't just in short supply, it's actively punished by death. I keep thinking of the average Japanese person who may or may not have wanted to die for the emperor. Are they looking forward to actually taking up arms with their women and children and fighting alongside the Japanese army in the built-up areas of Japan in house-to-house, hand-to-hand combat against the Allied forces? Something tells me there are going to be a lot of regular Japanese folks who would see that as a failure of government. And once again, there are going to be people who say, well, then they shouldn't have started the war, they shouldn't have mistreated all of the populations they dealt with so much, which is a fair point. But let's remember that if the Japanese are going to die because they're going to have to be rooted out of all these buildings, somebody's going to have to do the rooting out. And this is what my stepfather was referring to once. He talked to me about how it was kind of a double-edged sword reading in the newspapers about how well the war was going. Because my stepdad's a guy who got into the Second World War at the real tail end of it. So had there been a 1946 continuation of the war, that's when he would have been in the thick of it. So like a lot of people, by the end of the war, he was kind of trying to time it out in his head. Right, is this thing going to be over before I'm on the front line areas? He was a naval frontline areas was right off the coast of Japan if there was 1946 fighting. And he said every time there'd be another victory, another island taken, another closer hop to Japan, and more of the shrinking of the blast radius of Japan's supernova. He said that's the same as saying we're one step closer to the final battles for Japan's home islands, the Ragnarok, right? And he's thinking to himself, everybody already knows how diehard the Japanese were on all these islands. We've already had to take from them that they don't care about as much as the home islands. And we still have to go do that. Nobody was looking forward to this. I just keep thinking about how unnerving the previews to it all would be. If I were a nearly fighting age young man in the United States in, say, April, early May 1945, and I'm reading about the Battle of Berlin, right, the last assault the Red Army launches on Hitler's capital city with Hitler in it, the last big battle, right, it's going to end right here, Ragnarok in Berlin. If I'm reading about that, something that turns into arguably the worst urban combat in human history, the Red Army loses more than 80,000 men in 16 days. The Germans lose more than 20,000 civilians. Hitler kills himself in the bunker with the Soviet troops yards away. It could have been more last ditches if a Soviet soldier had broken down the bunker doors and stabbed Hitler with a bayonet. And Hitler is not perceived as any more fanatical than Japanese leadership and maybe your average Japanese loyal soldier and maybe even his wife and child, who knows. But to somebody like yours truly reading the paper, this would have looked like a horrible preview of what the Tokyo situation's going to look like in a few months when we get to that. And yet the alternative to Ragnarok is to let the human being lawnmower continue to rack up obscene monthly death totals until it's stopped. There are no good choices, are there? And choices are where people like yours truly, I know many of you too, we can't help but look at the choices and become fascinated with. I mean, it's tempting always for a person who's in the war games and chess and all that stuff to think about this in terms of a game, like a geostrategic card game. And the danger with that is all the decisions look so much easier when you're looking at them now. You have no idea all the little influences and roadblocks and inhibitors and pressures and everything else that was working on the historical figure. I always have this image of them coming back in a time machine and hearing someone like yours truly say, well, here's what you should have done, and having them say, oh yeah, sure, you don't think I would have done that if I could have, but I couldn't do because of all these things that are not even in your history books that were acting on me. So with that having been said, it's still hard for me to not look at this sometimes like a card game. And in 1944, what's fascinating that year is that the Germans and the Japanese only have a few meaningful cards left to play. A limited amount harbored and stockpiled strength. A little bit of rocket fuel, if you will, that they kept aside for just this time. So what do you do with it? What do you use it for? What is a worthy goal to use some of your last remaining strength for if winning the war probably isn't on the table? I never like to say it's never on the table because war is full of weirdness to the degree that you can't ever say ever. Somebody's always pulling victory out of the jaws of defeat. But basically, there are no war-winning cards left to play, at least no obvious war-winning cards left to play. So how do you play? What cards you still have left? That's fascinating. The Germans' offensive in late 1944, the Second Ardennes, as it's called, the Americans call it the Battle of the Bulge. That's an example of Hitler playing one of those last cards, a stockpile of stuff. Let's use it here. What was he trying to do? Historians and armchair generals ever since have been critiquing that decision. There were a lot of people, even at the time, that maybe would have liked to have seen all of that stockpiled strength used against the Red Army instead to maybe forestall what happened in Berlin long enough to let the Allies get there first. The Western Allies would be better, I guess the Soviet Union's done as well. Regardless, hindsight's 2020, right? The Japanese cards that they have to play, they're playing early on in 1944 when they launch an offensive. India Theater in March 1944, and then a month later they launched the largest offensive of the war on their part. And I think I read the largest offensive in Imperial Japanese Army history with the Ichigo campaign in China. We mentioned both these campaigns actually briefly in the last segment. But the Ichigo campaign is the kind where you look at and you don't even know how the Japanese do it. I mentioned a long time ago that to me the Japanese look like one of the peoples on the planet that punch above their weight class because they are able to pull off stuff where you would look at their population numbers and their geographical questions, their history, and think that they're not going to be able to do that, and they achieve it anyway. And I just wonder, looking at their history, if maybe they just have to. We talked about the limitations of their somewhat dysfunctional, subpar, usually in terms of outcome, government design. We've talked about the problems that they have with the organization of the military and how you have this issue that a mid-level officer is able to exert an undue amount of control and influence over military policy. These are all things that put the Japanese into very tough situations, and time and again, somehow, despite all of the impediments and the odds against them, the Japanese people manage to pull the fat out of the fire more times than not. In some way, for the Ichigo offensive, the Japanese stockpiled ammunition for 2 years and aviation airfuel for 8 months. And when they launch this multi-stage offensive that will go from April 1944 to at least December 1944, I believe there's still significant fighting going on in January 1945. The 500,000 Japanese troops, more than 15,000 vehicles, more than 100,000 animals, launched this assault on China that is ferocious. And, we should point out that nowhere in the Pacific was anybody facing armies like 500,000 soldiers. These are land war in Asia-sized armies. Okay? I mean, the big battles in the Pacific later on are going to be fractions of this number. The only exception I can think of is the Philippines campaign, which is still to come, but even then, the Japanese are more on the defensive there, whereas in China, on the Ichigo offensive, it is a massive, many months long assault. You're fighting Chinese armies, which are traditionally very large, and in this campaign, the Japanese are often outnumbered and fighting multiple Chinese armies, which means lots of troops. You better have lots of troops. The irony of the whole thing is that the Japanese, in large part, succeed in many ways in this offensive. If you were judging this offensive outside of the context of the war, you'd go, wow, they pulled off a lot of upsets here. Almost knocked the nationalists out of the war, did retake the American air bases they wanted eliminated, did connect these territories they wanted connected, but so many historians I was reading pointed out, so what? So you took this giant amount of remaining rocket fuel you had stored up and saved to use somehow, and you did it in a way that won't slow the Allied advance across the Pacific Islands and toward the Japanese homeland at all? Right? Was that a wasted card? You actually achieved a lot of what you wanted to achieve. It actually worked out pretty well, judging by, a non-contextual sort of standard, but in a contextual sort of standard, you didn't do anything to slow down or losing the war. Needless to say, it keeps the human being lawnmower working overtime. I mean, 750,000 Chinese soldiers may have been killed. I've seen 100,000 Japanese as a death toll. Sometimes the numbers are hard to trust, differ source to source, the methodology is different. But there may have been 200,000 Chinese civilian deaths due to this offensive. And in the same way that there are critics of Hitler's decision to use some of his last precious rocket fuel against the Western Allies instead of against the Soviets, saying that it was essentially a boon for communism and it trapped more of Central Europe behind the Iron Curtain. A similar charge is sometimes made against the Japanese for the Ichigo campaign. For example, Japanese military historian Hara Takeshi, writing The Battle for China, proclaims the Ichigo campaign to have been a disaster for both the Japanese and the nationalist Chinese. He says the only winners were the communists because they sat back and watched their two worst enemies, the Japanese and the nationalist Chinese, kill each other off. The nationalist and the communist Chinese, of course, have been fighting a civil war the Japanese invasion of China sort of temporarily put a damper on that, but it will spring into new life after the Japanese are defeated. And because perhaps of the damage that was done to the nationalists will lose that civil war. Well, of course, we have a communist China today, so there are some historians who suggest that the Japanese helped give us a communist China today. It's interesting and fascinating to contemplate, isn't it? Considering that in 1944, Japan was probably the most anti-communist country in the world. There's some historical irony, isn't it? Talk about not getting what you wished for. I happen to find much more intrigue in the Japanese offensive in Burma, the one that kicks off a month before Ichigo and was supposed to act sort of in tandem with it. To me, it's much more interesting because there's a wild card element involved. If you know where the Japanese are at this time in the war, wild cards look good. How about playing a Joker card? Being a campaign, right? Introduce a little chaos somewhere. Where it might do some good for you or effort. You can't win the war. What can you do? The Japanese offensive in central Burma is known as the Yugo campaign. The Japanese view. In Anglo-American histories, it's often referred to as the invasion of India in 1944. Now, most military history accounts of the Yugo campaign state the sort of goals that also don't really do a whole lot to keep Japan from losing the war. Doesn't even really do much to slow it down. I mean, you know, I love the Encyclopedia of Military History by war artist They describe the Japanese goals this way. By the way, Kawabe
billboard I saw.
two Japanese
He said Ohio. When I moved to Ohio,
Kawabe had directed Noguchi to prepare for an offensive across the mountains into eastern India with 3 of his divisions, which, with attached units, totaled nearly 100,000 veteran combat troops. The objective was twofold, they write. First, to seize the Imphal Kohima plain of Manipur, the logical assembly area and base for any Allied invasion of central Burma from India. Second, to cut the railroad line into Assam, which passed through Manipur, and which carried almost all the supplies into China. So this doesn't sound a whole lot different than the Ichigo campaign, does it? The sort of sound military objectives that won't keep you from losing the war. But there's a secondary consideration, or a lot of my history books will call it a secondary objective. Sometimes they'll have a whole paragraph outline the seizing of the railheads and all these military things, and then add like a couple of words or a single sentence at the end of the paragraph and say something to the effect of, oh yeah, and maybe prompt some sort of a rebellion in India. That little secondary consideration is the most interesting part of this plan to me, and the most scary to a dedicated imperialist like Winston Churchill. In his book, a series of books, The History of the Second World War, written not that long after the Second World War, and sometimes you can see it as almost a window into the psychology of Winston Churchill. Churchill doesn't talk at all about seizing this railhead or this. He lays out what the head of the greatest colonial power in human history, his worry is. He puts it this way. He says, quote, they, meaning the Japanese, proposed to invade eastern India and raise the flag of rebellion against the British. Raise the flag of rebellion against the British. What would that even mean? Well, first we have to recall the global situation in 1944. A ton of the world are colonial possessions during this time. Go look at the map. And a lot of the places that aren't colonial possessions are de facto ones where they're sort of under the control of other people. I mean, but almost all of Africa is colonized during this period. Most of the places that the Japanese took over after the Pearl Harbor attacks, they didn't take from the indigenous peoples. They conquered those places from the colonial countries that had taken them over a long time ago. I mean, the Japanese threw out the Dutch, who were controlling places like Java and Sumatra. They threw out the French, who were in Indochina, right? Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam today. They threw the British out of Burma. And now the British were in India, and were the Japanese going to cloud seed the revolution there? It's a weird thought, isn't it? Cloud seeding the revolution. But if you look at the histories of the late 1940s after the Second World War, the 1950s, the 1960s, really into the 1970s, there were so many wars and struggles and political problems that one could broadly classify as the unraveling of colonialism. I mean, the Vietnam War is as a result of the unraveling of colonialism. And so many of these places that will
You guys
fall
gifted
into these
me.
categories in the decades
Yes,
after the
sir.
Second World War have the seeds and the nucleus of those things in existence already.
I'm Hitch Jr., baby.
I remember a history professor pointing out that one of the key amplifiers and accelerators of this process was that the Japanese didn't just throw out these colonial powers when they took over these countries from them. They threw them out quickly and at the same time. So instead of the Dutch having to leave the Indies, and then 10 years later the French having to leave Indochina, and then 10 years after that the British having to leave India, the Japanese threw them all out in a matter of months and kept them out of those territories for years. And so when those countries evicted the Japanese and retook their colonial possessions, those colonial possessions had not had their colonial masters there for some time. It's tough to put those genies back in the bottle, especially when those areas weren't too happy with the colonial masters already. India is a perfect example of that. By 1944, there are some seriously angry Indians, and they're angry at the British.
Shout out
Conversation
to
earlier on,
Muhammad Ali, who lives in
we
Barron
talked about
Springs.
how the Indians already were for years before this time
Really nice.
advocating for
Barron
independence
Springs.
from Britain. How they even found themselves in the Second World War. It was a slap at the face. The British viceroy just said, "We're in." Didn't ask Indian leadership or the top people in India at all. In 1942, when talks broke down on Indian independence, Mohandas Gandhi, called Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul, he starts the Quit India campaign, which is we're not going to cooperate with the war effort. For his troubles, he gets thrown into jail along with most of the leadership of his political party. There will be something like 100,000 Indians thrown into prison during this time period. There will be riots, rebellions, protests. At some of these protests, troops will open fire, and hundreds, if not thousands, those numbers are debatable, will be killed. There is a famine in Bengal in 1943, which we also mentioned, which will stretch into 1944, which it's a very controversial issue. It's often blamed on war-related things, and a guy who gets the lion's share of the blame on the part of some people is Winston Churchill. He's called genocidal by some Indians today, but millions will die in this. It contributes to the mood. Brigadier Peter Young, who wrote a book in the 1970s called The Dictionary of Battles, claims that it was taking 100,000 British and Indian soldiers to keep them on unrest in India during this time period. So this is even before the Japanese make their move here. Worth pointing out that India is not the kind of place, no country is, but especially not India, that is of like mind about anything. It is an enormous country and potentially the most diverse country I've ever seen, top to bottom, side to side. And it was even bigger in this period than it is now, because its territories included the modern states of Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. Some of these people support the British. There are princely groups, for example, that have an arrangement with the colonial powers. Muslims and the Hindus have different opinions on things. We mentioned earlier there's 2.5 million Indian soldiers fighting for the Allies. But there's also Indian soldiers fighting with the Japanese against the Allies. It's a much smaller number. But in this campaign, this invasion of India in 1944, they're going to play an important role. They're led by a charismatic Indian figure. His name is Subhas Chandra Bose. And, if you wanted to make a really poor analogy, I apologize for this, but Gandhi and Martin Luther King have some similarities, because Martin Luther King modeled some of his tactics on Gandhi's nonviolent approach. Well, if you want to equate those two, then Subhas Chandra Bose is more like an unreformed version of Malcolm X. His attitude is much more of by any means necessary. And whereas Gandhi eschews violence to get the British out of India, Bose embraces it. He's leading a bunch of Indian troops. I think the Indian army fighting the Japanese is like 17,000 people. I think he's leading 7,000 or 8,000 in this assault on India. A lot of these Indians were POWs, and they were offered the chance. When Singapore fell, a lot of them fell into Japanese hands. They were offered this chance to be in horrific POW conditions or join this army. And a lot of them, unsurprisingly, did. But Bose is involved in trying to tell the Japanese commander, listen, you defeat the British military forces here, and I will go into India with these Indians. We'll carry Indian flags of independence, and we'll raise India to rebellion. What would happen if that actually occurred? I can't think of any card the Japanese could play at this point in the war that would create more, if you'll pardon the Star Wars reference, but more of a disturbance in the Allied force than prompting a rebellion in India. Now, because India is not of one mind, I don't think you'd ever see anything like India just flip to the Axis powers, but you could easily see India descend into chaos, because you'll see it after the Second World War during the chaos involved in independence. And India is one of those countries that 5 minutes after it descends into chaos, you have a humanitarian catastrophe on your hands. If it's taken 100,000 British and Indian troops to keep Indian unrest under control, without any of that, what's it going to take if India goes sideways on the
I mean,
airline?
I had TAs. They could speak English. They could speak English very well. If I couldn't speak English, sometimes they taught elements of the class. If I couldn't speak to them,
Why would this stop at India?
that would be difficult.
I wouldn't really consider them an expert in the field.
Not that long ago, will recall
If
how
they can't speak
amazing
English,
it
they're not
is
an
to
expert
see
in the
how
field.
quickly
That doesn't,
an idea
to teach an American school,
spread.
teach kids that basically only speak
Once
English,
described ideas like an intellectual contagion.
that doesn't seem like
Many
it's a very
people who said that the Arab Spring was only
That's
made
very,
possible because of modern day communications, but
because at a certain
that's
point, be
happened
like,
many
well,
times
why
in
don't
the
you have
past.
somebody
If you
who
look
can
at the famous
like
1948, the so-called
smell better
revolutions, how
as well?
revolutions sprung
Somebody
up in
who
so many different countries
walk
at
better
once.
for you. Well, at a certain point, then you got like 6 different people doing the job of one fucking person that basically wants
bunch of these colonial.
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't have like distinguished lecturers and things like that, but a TA is a kind of anybody can do that job. And
chaos into the equation.
if you can't speak the language,
Let's recall that the Japanese
then I don't think
propaganda has
you
been laying the groundwork for this for
fulfill
years.
the requirement.
That's why
if you
we
can't
brought it up much earlier
grade
in this
your own
conversation.
papers,
I think maybe in the very first segment where we talked about Pan-Asianism, which is an intellectual
I mean, I could go
doctrine with a long history. And
to Israel
countries have
and be
their
like a
own
distinguished
version,
lecturer in a
but the
lot of
Japanese
things.
took a
Cool.
little bit of that and injected it
But that doesn't mean you want me as a TA. TA is like has grading responsibilities, and you want to be able to. I mean, maybe you would.
Consistently saying
I wouldn't
things
fuck you like some TA. Anyway,
pushing for Asia, for the Asiatics.
maybe I would.
We had quoted in the first show, I think, that Japanese soldier who said that he was fired up by his teacher back in, I think it was their version of high school, who was talking about the white man, what he was doing in Asia to Asians. And
This should be in a job
talked
description.
about black folks in the United States, Native Americans in the United States, and this Japanese soldier said he was fired up.
You should make him take a
all these
test.
people.
What?
In 1943, the Japanese
Very
made a big
common.
show
In academia to make people take tests?
a bunch
Yeah.
of these countries, like Burma, for example, they're not really giving it to them. It's a great propaganda tool. And back in 1941,
Because then you have to have someone who is a translator, and they're not going to make very much money for
determined
that.
to shatter the white man's
So
mastery
you put a
over
Google
all
Translate, it should be
End quote. If you are a British man in London reading the London Times in the morning, or a Frenchman in Paris doing the equivalent, that sends a chill up your spine. But if you are a Vietnamese person in French Indochina, or a Burmese person in Burma, or an Indian person in India, and many of those people, if you look at the rules sometimes, not all places are the same, but they're living under rules that make them seem like second-class citizens. Some of the rules I've seen remind one of the Jim Crow South or apartheid South Africa. The Japanese
Everybody
driving
wants
out
serenity.
your
And the boy, the kid, the
borders
guy.
from
That one's
far
too.
away from your homeland might look a lot more like liberation than conquest. And if The Japanese have only been able to walk a little bit better, live up to their height, but who knows what they might have accomplished. But as we've said over and over,
Be a nice,
I don't know if that's
like,
because
romantic
the
moment.
entire thing was nothing but a fig leaf from Japanese proto imperialism the whole time,
Okay,
whether it was a case of the Japanese
I'll
right
that one
hand
second.
not knowing or caring what the Japanese left hand was doing. Oftentimes the military people seem a lot more dismissive of this idea of Asia for the Asiatics, and the Japanese is the tip of the spear for Asian independence. The Japanese intellectuals, citizens,
Yeah,
or soldiers do. It's a cause worth dying for. Many of the people's fighting on the good guy side
Shout
and
out
the
to her
bad guy side.
boyfriend.
The whole motto.
That's gonna be her boyfriend. Really? Not really, but I don't know. What did this guy do? She works all day and he just drove around in a fucking old Lexus and waited around to pick her up for lunch. And she'd go back to work and then he'd pick her up at the end of the day.
Japanese might be trying to cloud seed a revolution here, and that's a fascinating concept when you're down to your last few cards. If India went sideways,
Anyway, are you done?
You would have a circumstance where the great supply center for the entire Asian war, the British Empire, would be unusable or cut off, according to Brigadier Peter Young in his book, A Dictionary of Battles. It's already happening with sabotage and everything else.
Crazy?
Now, as a guy who would rather swing for the fences at this point in the war, if I'm the one playing the Japanese geostrategic card hand, or throw a Hail Mary pass, or put all of my chips on one last roll of the die, or one spin of the roulette wheel, this idea appeals to me a lot more than the Ichigo offensive. The problem, of course, is the way it's carried out. The Japanese do something here that, once again, I try to figure out in American equivalent. If an American army went into battle without enough supplies, and the plan was to take a chance on them starving to death, I wonder how the American people
I'm like, we're immune to all that shit.
It's because the Japanese
COVID-23. Not COVID-23, that was a little bit back up. COVID-23.
And the Japanese plan on not providing enough supplies for their troops. I guess that's a good way to get away from a supply problem. We just don't supply enough, but the country is difficult to supply regularly. The Japanese will do the same thing in this Burma campaign, where they send their troops to attack Imphal and Kohima, or other places, and only give them something like 20 or 21 days worth of supplies. The goal, they say, is to take what you need to live, the bullets you need to fight, the food you need to eat, the medical supplies you need to take care of your wounded from the enemy after you defeat them. Which, of course, leads to the very interesting question, what happens if you don't?
No.
Or what happens if you don't defeat them in time to have what you need before the supplies run out? Well, it's a catastrophe, right? And General Motoguchi is issuing press releases saying that this giant offensive is going to change the whole complexion of the war, real rah-rah stuff. Some of his divisional commanders clearly see what's about to happen here. In his book, Hirohito's War, Francis Pike talks about one of the pronunciations of Sato. And Sato's troops are going to have to cross the Chinbun River, which is sort of one of these big dividing lines, in order to make these attacks. Pike writes, Lieutenant General Katoko Sato, commanding the 31st Infantry Division, had to transport his troops 1,000 miles before the offensive was launched. He was deeply pessimistic about the plans for the campaign, though he was partially qualified by promises of 250 tons of supplies before March 25th, and then 10 tons by the week afterwards. None of these supplies actually arrived. Before leaving the Chinbun, Pike writes, Sato toasted his fellow officers with champagne, telling them, quote,
Like stamps, one of those old like time,
making something
you know, like a king would have like a stamp, like wax.
Everyone is likely to lose his life in this operation.
Those are stamps
It
with
isn't
a pussy
simply
lip.
a question of the enemy's bullets.
Oh yeah,
You must be prepared for death by starvation in these mountain fastnesses. End quote. Pike then says, they were prophetic words. End quote. Now, you don't see a lot of starvation. I mean, real, like dying from hunger starvation amongst modern armies. But in fairness to the Japanese, part of the problem here is the terrain. It is an awful country to try to get supplies to troops through. So much of the Asia Pacific theater isn't it? I mean, we used a line from several of my history books, sort of a saying amongst Japanese troops comparing the relative merits of places they might find themselves serving in. Like, one of them was that heaven was Java, hell was Burma, but no one returns alive from New Guinea. We were trying to point out when we said that how terrible a place to fight New Guinea was, but Burma, if it's better, is only better by the nth degree. It has the same combination of wonderful terrain types that make a place like New Guinea so difficult to fight in. Heavy jungle with really high mountains. It's actually on the way to the Himalayan range, so you get these 7,000-foot mountains with heavy jungle. And the jungle is so heavy, the British commander makes a mistake in thinking that the Japanese won't be able to get large numbers of troops through it. He's wrong about that. But the Japanese won't be able to get lots of supplies through it, which contributes to the starvation problem. The other issue with terrain like this is it is absolutely made for disease. New Guinea is one of the wettest places in the world. Burma's wetter, up to 5 inches of rain a day during the monsoon season, and the monsoon season lasts half the year. It pretty much shuts down military operations, which is part of the reason why you haven't seen as much action in Burma, although there's been skirmishing and some things going on. I mean, you really only have half a campaign season, but the disease is as bad as the worst places in the Asia Pacific. You start with malaria and work your way down an exhaustive list. The majority of casualties are caused by disease and not by enemy bullets, and some of these units reach disease casualty rates of like 600%. And 600% means that people are coming back from recuperation and getting it again, that new people are being brought in as replacements, and they're getting sick. It is completely muddy once the rain starts, and there's only a few good modern roads, and those places become the key points that are fought over. The army that the Japanese are fighting is one of the most diverse in the world, and I often try to imagine myself as a Japanese soldier during this time period from a small island nation. You find yourself in Burma, and in the north you're fighting Chinese troops and American troops, sometimes Chinese and American troops together. In this campaign, you're fighting the British Empire, whose armies are some of the most diverse ever fielded. So you have your troops from Great Britain, of course, your Englishmen, your Scotsmen, your Welshmen. I'm sure there are some Irish guys there, there always seem to be. But then you have a ton of Indians from all over India. You have the famous Gurkhas from Nepal who fight with the British. And then you have a bunch of people from sub-Saharan Africa, East and West Africa, the colonial regions are called. But those form a multitude of modern-day African countries. The poor Japanese person is getting like a visual representation through the diversity of the army that they're facing, of the depth of Allied power and resources right here. Here's the way Yasmin Khan in her book India at War describes the kickoff of this campaign. The Japanese in the first week of March push across the China River and start this offensive. The Japanese take an ambitious incursion into Indian territory, but by 1944, the Allies were fully prepared for it. In March 1944, the Japanese pushed into the northeast and advanced along the Imphal-Dimapur Road in an attempt to cut all supply lines and to capture the strategic pivotal Kobe. The 14th Army, an eclectic collection of nearly 500,000 troops, including British infantrymen, Canadian and American pilots, the Assam Rifles, the King's African Rifles, and troops from the Gold Coast, had been trained, equipped, and honed into a modern fighting force by now. Among the infantry, morale was high. There was an effective organizationalist corps, and a powerful air support gave the Allies a distinct advantage. Nonetheless, the Japanese made a massive thrust, sending in 85,000 men, far more than had been expected. and for a time
Anyway,
it
what
was
else
that they
do we
might
have?
cut off and occupy
Oh,
northeast
we're just like the plastics.
But in
That's
stark
so fetch.
contrast to
Make that really big,
1942,
fetch, and fucking sleek.
the Japanese quickly
Big words
became
for that, yeah.
overstretched
Honestly.
as their supply lines were bogged down over hundreds of miles of difficult terrain, winding back into Southeast Asia.
Oh, I love this.
Basically, what happens is the British are ready for this assault, but it just happens sooner than they thought it was going to happen, in greater strength than they expected, and more quickly than they'd accounted for, which puts them at a disadvantage initially. The Japanese are able to get around the flanks of a bunch of units. They cut one major force off that has to fight its way out, and then they basically surround their two areas that they're after, Imphal and Kohima. Kohima's a
So you have to
mountain
be 21 or
village
15 or whatever.
that's
it is,
heavily
that.
jungled about
But it's
80
only like
miles
little
north of
kids.
Imphal. And the Imphal plain is a large, relatively open area. The Japanese will basically put both of them under siege and several times try to assault them and overrun them. Part of the reason for the heroism here is that not only are they cut off, but the British Imperial forces are badly outnumbered. I think there's 15 to 20,000 Japanese attacking Kohima, for example, and something like 1,800 defenders at Kohima. This is actually, it's funny, this is both a little-known affair, especially outside the British Empire and the Japanese homeland today. And yet, it was voted in 2013, I believe,
This is
Britain's
Yosh.
greatest battle
Yosh
of
taught
the
him well.
modern era,
Yosh was his
beating out
teacher.
such
Yosh
famous
taught
encounters as
nursing
Napoleon's
school
defeat
for a
at Waterloo
short period of time.
and the British
In one
landings
home
at
nurse's aide,
Normandy
he
on
learned
D-Day.
everything.
And yet, the victory was won by an army that's known as the Forgotten Army. So does that tell you something? There's a couple of reasons that might explain this. Starting with the terrain. The jungle and mountain terrain has a way of frustrating large forces being used. And in our discussion, we were talking about Guadalcanal and places like that. Mary Berger, it's touched with fire. He talks about how so much of the fighting devolves down to like squads and companies and controls and things like that. They're very different than like large armies in, say, North Africa or the Western or Eastern fronts in Italy you're dealing with. These man's last bid for victory, the invasion of India.
He would bow. You should be bowing right now. Why?
Describes it this way, quote,
You should be like,
when Field Marshal Sir Archibald Wavell, the Viceroy of India, visited headquarters 14th Army in August 1944, he was perplexed by the nature of the fighting, describing it in a letter to London as taking place strangely in what he called hilly packets. He was right. The battle did not involve massed brigades and divisions, fighting in carefully choreographed coherence on a perhaps traditional model, if a normally chaotic battlefield could ever be described thus, but was instead, a confused and disparate section and platoon, sometimes company-level struggle, fought at many different points of the compass in the jungle, matted hills and valleys encircling the Imphal plain, and the swampy terrain around Mission. None of the land battles were directly interconnected. The struggles for the north and northeast, the south and southeast, being conducted largely independent by both attacker and defender. Add to that the fact that battle is a very strange term to use for 20th century large-scale conflict, because it's so different than all the previous eras that came before it, when a battle usually meant one really horrible day. Really terrible battles in human history up until the modern era are 2 or 3 days long. Now, we're not talking about sieges, we can go on for months or years, but a battle is generally something on a small enough area where you can get above the fray and the dust and the commotion and the chaos, get up to the hill, maybe with a little spyglass, you can usually see the whole thing. Not here, not in the 20th century. You're better off referring to these things to avoid confusion, and they often are referred to, instead of battles, as operations. Operations that are the sum total of thousands of potentially fatal tasks. So when you read the accounts of a veteran in these modern operations, their entire war experience may be when they ran into a concealed gun in a hill a mile away from the road that they're on that shuts down road traffic until they can figure out a way to outflank the gun and take it out, right? That's one of those thousands of little potentially fatal tasks that when you add them all together equals an operation like the Info Kohima campaign. But it sure makes it less dramatic in the big picture sense and much harder to follow. But in the small unit sense, it is as dramatic and horrifying as any encounter you'll find in war. Worse. If you look at the big picture timeline in the first week of March, the Japanese cross the Chinwin River, as we had said. They blow past the flanks of one major unit, surround it, and it has to fight its way out. Then they advance on Infal and Kohima and manage to put those places under siege. If this had been an earlier war, those places would be cut off, and the British and Imperial troops in those places would begin to run out of ammunition. They wouldn't have any reinforcements, they would run out of medical supplies, they would run out of food, and that would be that. The difference here, though, is, and this is what frustrates the Japanese, the Allies have the ability to supply the cut-off areas by air. This is huge, and it's a new development, right? It was only really in the Second World War that the capability existed to even try this, and past attempts had been hit or missed, to say the least. I mean, when the German army is surrounded by the Soviets at Stalingrad, the Luftwaffe tries to fly in supplies, and they can't manage to provide anywhere near enough for a
They could
starved
say so
army
much.
running out of ammunition.
Basically, just to say their name. So much more ad space.
There are American air assets that have been flying supplies.
And if they only just said like
over
once
what's
a day,
called the hump,
that every
which are
fucking
much
thing.
mountain
Like, I'm not saying they have to
ranges
go
into
away.
China. It's also
It's
called
like we don't have to hit.
skyway
Hey,
to
Nick
hell.
Kayokini, we fucking know. They could say
Some of these big, heavy supply
another thing
planes.
instead of Nick
To
Kayokini.
add to their Spitfire and Hurricane fighters, which they're using in a mostly ground attack role,
Angel
they
Martinez.
change the entire
Like, that's what
equation
Angel
and
Martinez.
begin to supply their cut-off troops with
That's
what
a
they
long
need to keep
fucking
fighting. And recall,
yeah.
the Japanese have only a limited amount of this stuff themselves. They can't do the air supply thing.
Jennifer
They
Jones
can't
Lee.
take the supplies of the people that they cut off and are fighting in
Okay, bye.
They're going to run out of supplies themselves. I like the way the British
That's how
general
people
in charge
try
of
to
this
fight them
operation
to their
describes it.
house.
His name, by the way, is Lieutenant General William Slim. He's a very fine general. He
Then
cops
you
to
at least
his
follow. Now that would be a
mistakes
thing.
initially.
Nick
He
Kayokini or
underestimated
whatever.
the
Instead of saying
Japanese
that, be like
speed
at
and
Nick
size
T or
that they
whatever.
could
No.
penetrate the jungle with their troops. But then explains really the
Did he
entire
interact with his friends?
battle in the terms that
His fanbase?
will decide it.
Yeah, it'd be you. It'd be like, hey, dude. We'd be
As I
like,
struggled hard to redress my errors and to speed by rail and air these reinforcements, I knew that all depended on the steadfastness of the troops already meeting the first impetus of attack. If they could hold until help arrived, all would be well. If not, we were near disaster. End quote. So that's what has to happen. The air supply helps, but bottom line, it's a question of heroism. And I am not a glory guy when it comes to war. Being in the camp of the William Tecumseh Sherman, the American general, who had said that war's glory is all moonshine. I don't think killing other people is glorious, but I think surviving against incredible odds, putting up with the privation, the hardship, enduring the unendurable for the sake of whatever is motivating you to do so can often be heroic. And it's a shame that things like the colonial overtones, or if you're the Japanese or the Germans, the evil cause in which you're fighting, that somehow or sometimes overshadows the heroism of the troops involved. Rarely do you read combat accounts where the troops are talking about things like, a German soldier saying he's ready to fight and die for more Lebensraum for Germany, right? Or an American who's fighting and dying for the larger cause of freedom for the world. Or a Japanese soldier who's fighting and dying to conquer and control other Asian peoples, or even a British soldier from Kent, maybe, or a place like that, ready to lay down his life so Britain can maintain its colonial dominance of a place like India. That's generally not what it's about. And bottom line, of course, it's about kill or be killed. But above that, you'll read so many accounts where soldiers are fighting for their comrades, or their unit, or the esprit de corps, the group that they belong to, or maybe just to not let down those other people that are depending on them. I mean, it's very baseline stuff. Your worldview and your horizon shrinks, and the lens you view things through is very narrow and immediate. So I don't like the idea that, and this is a problem in India. I read that the Indians have a hard time sometimes trying to figure out how to portray this whole affair because it's so overshadowed with the colonial question. Were Indian troops fighting with the British mercenaries fighting for the colonial master, or were they heroes fighting for post-war Indian independence? I mean, this is a complicated question, and as John Toller in his book The Rising Sun, this whole Burma campaign is an ideological and geographic nightmare, but that shouldn't overshadow what is done there by all the soldiers on all sides.
Pick tomatoes.
First of all, the Japanese throw themselves at the enemy wave after wave, sometimes suicidally. British General Slim was very critical of the throwing away of Japanese lives. He also had a true admiration for the Japanese as a fighting people because
Really? Yeah.
it's just
Tomato plants are really big.
Robert Lyman's book, Japan's Last
Gotta get one of those things like in a fucking cartoon to shoot on it.
With the difficulties posed by the climate came a stark reminder to any British Commonwealth troops who had not yet experienced the toughness of their adversary, of just how extraordinarily fit and physically hardy were the Japanese, how committed they were to achieving their objectives, how apparently unconcerned they were with regard to human comforts, how determined they were to do what the Emperor, through their officers, demanded, or die in the attempt. Repeated, fanatical, and suicidal attacks were thrown at the British,
in from
Indian,
Hungary,
and
and they only had
Gurkha
one bathroom,
and
and she was
counterattacks
taking a
had to
really
face the
long bath.
toughest
She had
defensive positions
taken a bath,
imaginable, prepared by men whom General
showered
Slim
all
was
the
to
time.
describe as
but she hadn't taken a
warrior
long
ants.
soaking bath in a long
As the
time.
days went by,
And
the
so it was a
battlefield
really nice
became
thing.
one large
And I
charnel
remember my
house,
grandfather being like,
littered
I
with
was like, I have to
bodies in
pee so
various
bad,
states
Grandpa.
of
And he's like, I
decomposition,
do too.
as it was
All right,
rarely
let's
easy to
go
recover
to
and
the
bury the
fucking
dead.
garage. And what? We peed in a
Look, by the way, at the
coffee can.
photographs as the battle
Really?
goes
Yeah, I
on.
remember staring at the fucking
Areas that are highly thought
WD-40
of for
as I
gopher,
pissed. Really?
heavy,
Yeah.
lush
Then what?
jungle where you can't see
The other
5
time,
feet in front of your face,
it was in a
to
hospital.
terrain that looks like
And
First World War battlefields, especially the ones that used to be forests but have been shelled into
all right, let's see that.
wasteland.
Use the restroom. I don't have to
General
go to
Slim
that.
actually
Oh,
says
yeah,
that
you
the
do.
battle for
You close the
Kohima
fucking pants
is the only one
Put
he'd seen
this
in the
fucking
Second World
anaconda-like
War.
thing in there.
Reminded him of the First
This
World
thing
War.
starts fucking steaming
Hard
up.
to know
He's
which
like,
is
I'm
different.
fine. I don't need
The
it.
British
He's like, oh
forces
no,
and
you gotta
Imperial
pee.
forces were so
Anyway,
badly
then I
outnumbered
start looking down
that
at
they
someone's
eventually
leg, starts dripping down
pushed
slowly,
onto
filling
one
up her
hill
fucking
some
nurse's shoe. She had like one of
50
those old
square
time nurses.
meters, and
You
they
don't
would
know
be
exactly
fighting
what this is.
over tennis court. And actually, it's called the tennis court, where the Japanese are on one side of the tennis
Hell,
court,
you
fighting
don't know my whole
British
fucking
Imperial
career.
forces
You
on
haven't
the
seen my
other side
fucking
of the
resume.
tennis court, and they're
She
throwing
kept me on top
grenades
of
at
life.
each other
There's
for
one
days and
decent
days
person
and
who I knew
days.
as a kid. Not that I
It's
knew
not
them.
glorious,
I volunteered
it's
for peace,
heroic
and there was
on
one
both
guy who was
sides.
no other
In
people
his
there though.
book, he
That
writes
Robertine.
more author
Did you ever
Francis
talk to
Pike
this guy?
tries to give
He
a sense
seemed
of
like
the fighting was like.
he
And
was
writes,
in
quote,
a living
most
hell.
famously, there was a 5-day tussle across the
I've
tennis
never seen
courts
anyone
belonging
in
to the
more of a
deputy
living hell in my
commissioner's
entire
bungalow.
life. Like what?
Soldiers dug in on
This
either side,
motherfucker
had to
was in a
live through
wheelchair.
torrential rain and eat, shift, and
Did
sleep
he
in their
still abuse
trenches.
people?
The
I
courts
actually
were
don't think he
covered in
abused people.
bloated
I think he
bodies
just
of
moved
slain
people around.
Japanese soldiers.
Really? Yeah.
Enormous
And
black flies filled
he
the
got
air.
you know,
The
in trouble
stench
for
of
that.
death was
But I don't think he
Major John
he
Nettlefield
personally
observed,
abused people.
quote, the place
But
stank.
municipalities
The ground everywhere was plowed up
And
with shell fire, and
not that
human
they didn't
remains
take care
lay
of him in the
rotting as
same
the
way.
battle raged over
They were
them.
nurses, so they were
Flies swarmed everywhere
good to
and
all of them.
multiplied with
But
incredible
I remember
speed.
they just used to put this
Men retched
motherfucker
as they
outside
dug
the
in.
window, and he used to just stare out the window for
Hand grenades rather than tennis balls crisscrossed the courts. The resilience of the defenders proved
Hours
the
and hours,
morale
hours,
that
and
General
none of the other
Slim
priests
had
talked to him.
instilled in his
Really?
troops. In one notable engagement,
Yeah.
John Harmon,
He was,
son of the millionaire owner of Lundy Island, a lance corporal with the Queen's Royal West Kent Regiment, single-handedly charged a Japanese trench,
Pariah.
killed its 5 occupants
Oh,
before
he
being
was doing his
fatally
dance.
shot.
Just like you are,
returning to
just
his
like you
own
told the
lines.
people on the phone.
Dying in his company commander's arms, he gave his last words. I got
Red
the
dot and
lot.
feather.
It was worth it.
Should ask for clarification.
But this is unsustainable for the Japanese because unlike their opponents, they are running out of
I drive
supplies.
40, man.
And not just food, but ammunition,
I
bullets,
drive
shells,
15.
medical stuff, everything. When you look at the
Fuck is that?
numbers that the Japanese units were reduced to, I have a hard time finding
Okay, so what
similar
time do we
numbers
start making
in any conflict
prison
anywhere,
ramen?
because normally units break and run before they hit those
Okay,
kinds
so
of
technically I haven't been in prison. Really, and I don't want
situations.
to.
Pike recalls,
Prison,
one
generally,
soldier
you go for
says
more than a year.
the losses have been dreadful.
And
The
it's,
regiment
I've had
had
friends in
started out
prison,
3,800
and
strong,
it is
and now just had a few hundred men left, and
a
many
terrible,
of them
terrible
invalids.
experience.
General
Oh, I know what I
Sato
wanted to say.
asks his superior, General Notaguchi, a man
Shout out to my one
often
friend who was
referred to
in
as a
prison.
blockhead by some of
He
his
was there for 20
subordinates,
years,
permission to retreat. He's denied.
16
He
or
asks
something like
again,
that.
and he's denied. And then
And
says, quote,
he just talked about
"This
time.
is shameful.
And I never heard
Notaguchi
anybody
should
talk about time like
apologize
this.
for his own failure to the dead soldiers and the Japanese people." End quote. General Notaguchi's response is to sack General Sato and send a subordinate with a sword to him so he can kill himself, which Sato refuses to do. Notaguchi will do the unthinkable here and sack 3 of his divisional
what was it?
generals, one for incompetence, one for ill health, and Sato
Well, he
for
knew
disobedience.
it's 13 and a half
Sato
minutes
doesn't
and 99
care.
bottles of beer on the wall.
He orders his troops to
Like, when
retreat
you got it down to
right
the
around
time
the
of
same
that,
time that the
I just really
Lhasa
respected,
open
oh
up.
my god, time is just, it's a bitch.
The
Really, yeah.
Japanese
And I remember he
on the
talked about
defensive
this in front of the shul
are just
his
as
time, and it was like,
difficult for the
really
Allies to
powerful
deal
story.
with as they are
Really, yeah.
on the offensive, and they have to be dug out position by position at huge cost to the Allied soldiers who have to do this.
Really, yeah. It's
In his book,
very
Japan's Last Bid for Victory, author Robert Lyman tries to give a sense of how hard it was to take the Japanese out of these defensive positions. He says that the British Imperial forces ate away slowly
So I haven't
at
been
the
in prison,
Japanese
so
defenses, and
I
said,
don't want to call it prison ramen.
nowhere were
But
sudden
I can
gains
tell you
made,
this, and he didn't
but
say
by
this.
gradual perseverance
So
and the
Trevor,
application of focused
I'm the one who
firepower,
can tell you
the
this.
Japanese were
In jail?
destroyed, bunker by bunker, trench by trench. Rarely did the Japanese
Snitches don't
run
get stitches.
or retreat,
They get sheets.
remaining to
What does
die
that
where they fought.
I shared a jail
Lieutenant
cell with this guy who
Glinthorne
killed
Higgett
somebody,
of the Dorsets
and
considered the Japanese to
I
be
was like, why'd you do
magnificent
it?
trench
he's like,
warriors.
motherfucker was a snitch.
Every army in the world talks
And
about holding positions
He
to
was
the
snitching
last
on
man.
somebody else,
Virtually
two other
no
guys,
other army, including the Germans, ever
and
did.
he
Were well
guy
sighted,
died. But
and they
they
had a good
wrapped
eye
a
for ground.
sheet around him and
They
strangled
relied
him
on
to death
rushing
over
and shouting in
the
the attack.
ledge.
We thought they were formidable
And he's like,
fighting
yeah, we killed him.
insects and savages. We took few
And he was
prisoners,
getting out
about 1 or 2 in the whole.
the same day I
We
was.
wanted prisoners, but wounded men would have a primed grenade under them. So stretcher
We were
bearers
like-
were very careful.
We were in the same cell. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, so this guy's gonna kill you. And he just was cold-blooded murderer. And of
Whatever his
anybody's
thoughts
being
about
killed
the
before
capabilities of
I am.
Japanese
But I was
commanders,
just like,
Slim was
was he
profuse
mean?
in his
No, he's
admiration
very,
for
very
Japanese
nice.
troops.
Very nice.
There can
Meaning,
be no question
shout out
of the
to that
supreme
guy.
courage
Well,
and
I'd be like,
hardy
I
of the
heard his stories
Japanese
because I'd
soldiers who
listen
made
to guys'
these
stories like
I
when
know
I'm
of
in
no
jail.
army
Like
that could
I'm a
have
lawyer at heart, so like, what? They'd ask me, "What'd you do?" I'm like, I don't really know. Really? Yeah, honestly, I was there for most of it. It was like, I don't know why. It was like at 10:31 or something, 10:35. Like, what is that? I don't know. It's just like what you said on the wait a minute, confidential matter.
A wetter version of Napoleon's retreat from
What the
Moscow.
fuck does that mean? I don't know. But it was like making threats with the electronic
left
device.
and right.
Whatever.
The Japanese refer to the road out as the road
I make
of
threats all the time.
remains. It's often translated.
That's freedom of speech, but it's an electronic device. Who cares?
There are many
They make
stories
threats on the
of
radio all the time with electronic
soldiers
device.
taking grenades,
Really?
sometimes in
Absolutely.
pairs,
I'm
and
not going to go to that restaurant
embrace
anymore.
their comrade and
That's a
blow
threat.
up a grenade
The
in
law
between
isn't
them.
written very well.
Medical
They were expecting some kid to
check
go
down
on
wounded
Facebook
troops
and be like,
with
I'm going to
something
shoot up my
so
school,
quickly.
and they could go and prosecute him for that.
The
That's not what we
grass,
have in this
potatoes,
case.
snails,
They're like,
lizards,
no.
snakes, monkeys,
They only
anything you can
saw
get
a
hands on.
small snapshot of like an
It's one of the
email.
worst retreats
It
I've
didn't
ever
see
heard about.
that the email was for educational purposes, and it said that in the larger. They just saw a snapshot, and I was arrested.
For like 88 days before it was
Anyway,
broken.
and it wasn't even that. They came and dropped some papers off at my door.
About 65,000
And
Japanese die.
I disagreed with what I had read, just like one line or so, and I walked in to the police station asking where, and this was all on camera, so I mean, it's out there. If I get my accounts back, you'll be able to see it. It still might be out there. I asked where, with whom could I speak to be able to just change these two lines if they were erroneous, and then they went and started getting me some money.
65,000
I went outside,
men died.
continued to tape,
More
and
than
it's like,
2.5 times the number
I don't
lost on
understand,
all of
yada
them.
yada yada,
And about as many as
what is
fell
going
on
on,
my
and they
team.
arrested me.
Mutaguchi,
Anyway,
chief of staff,
oh, that was the second time I got arrested. I got arrested a third time though, and that's when I was in jail.
as
I
was
was in only
Kawabe
good for
and
that
his
one.
chief of staff.
Anyway, so I was in jail
The
for
command
the third time.
shakeup and the destruction of the 15th Army, Japanese 15th
I
Army,
don't get into them all, but
infected every other unit in Burma. And by the end of the year,
this guy and I were sharing
Japanese
a
rule was at the
cell. I had the top bunk. Why?
This
I
is
was a
one
new
of
guy.
the worst defeats in
And
Japanese history.
literally, you're sitting there, and there's a fucking fluorescent light right here, and it never goes off. It's like
Up till this
torture.
time,
And what did I do the whole time?
interestingly enough, this is considered to be
I sat with my head underneath the blanket and just very,
because it's not a
very
decisive one.
never think I was getting out and thinking that I was going to be thrown
What can this
into so
card
much
do to
additional
restore
debt that they were going to put me in jail for that, like whatever. I just thought it was going to get in the system where you get out, like maybe you never get out. Maybe you get in a fist fight with a guy in there, and they say that you both were at fault, and you get extra time added. That happens all the time. Just somebody goes there innocently, and somebody picks a fight with them. They're defending themselves. A prison guard or jail guard sees that two guys are fighting. They get charges added, and now that person was there for maybe 3 nights, and now they're there 6 months, and that 6 months then turns into something really goes badly. Maybe 4 months into it, the guy gets stabbed in the yard, and they're accused of it. And now they're accused of murder, perhaps, or maybe it just goes away, or maybe they get murdered. In that, maybe they're the person who got stabbed in the jail yard just because they were looking at somebody incorrectly, or because they didn't want to be someone's bitch. Or, I mean, I remember when I was there, they were like,
to these islands, get all of the necessary
"What's your affiliation, basically?" And I was like, I didn't say that. I think it said, "Who you with?" And I'm like, "Huh?" They're like, "Who you with?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Jews? They're like, "Nah, homie."
By 1945, at the end of the
Are you with them? There are three groups. There's the brothers, the homies, and whiteys.
Special. You want to go see what Germany used to look like?
Brother.
Heidelberg.
Welcome to the club, baby.
They've rebuilt some of it to look just like it did before. It has a feel to me. You're used to the old buildings of like a movie set. But what are they supposed to do?
There's the homies, the brothers.
Created the conditions where the cultural
I just spent a week in jail. Okay, brothers are black guys. Woods are white guys. The homies are Mexican guys. Haises are Mexican. Who don't know it. Yeah, jails are laws, Wild West. I feared. In fact, expect that there are laws of it, and I'm not talking about the guard. Really, yeah. 21, he got a DUI, missed the court date. Under tried to serve, expecting to find a reprimand at a new court date. Instead, I was taken to jail. Here's what I learned. Ever been inside? I didn't know what to expect. I was nervous. I couldn't have pleased every nice person to get out that night. Inside, I found myself standing himself in an orange jumpsuit with a pillows like none of my warning. I was ever going to have to fight someone who has TV to And do you? You're there long enough. Fuck yeah. We're going in. The cops are toward him. What is he Where's he going? Ooh, he's in there with Omar. Oh man, he's fucked. Omar, as it turns out, was just a junkie. Medicated out of his mind, only a day or two himself via overdose. Jail is not a lawless Wild West, I fear. In fact, it's quite the opposite. There are laws of it. No, I'm not talking about what government forces. The inmates themselves have an entire complex system of rules and punishments, and my big takeaway from the week instead was just how smoothly and fairly that system is run. Right, yeah, and actually I'm thinking to myself, oh, this guy was so nice, he had killed somebody. But no, honestly,
willing to fight for their country, right? This is a kind of
when I was there, it was like I didn't know what to trust or anything. But I trusted this guy. I mean, he told me he killed somebody, so it was like, well, now I'm a witness to that. And what? Well, I would want to ask him someday. Because I really feel like he wasn't. He was getting out, so he didn't care anymore. But what did he have? He had bologna sandwiches and
doesn't have to happen. That's why sometimes
did you guys have apples?
the kamikaze, for example, they will make it
Like a pear or orange or something? No, they had bologna sandwich and these cookies that were wonderful. That's all I saw. What else? Man, I can't even fucking remember. Did they have like? They didn't have like fucking mustard or any kind of condiment. It's fucking bread and like everything's wrapped different. Sometimes it's like just bread and the bologna is separate, but this was like bread, bologna, bread, and just like the plain bologna. And then
these Japanese soldiers did when they would strap themselves.
and I was very, very hungry. You'll see it was on the camera. I hadn't eaten in many days. I was eating
Most armies
mental cough drops to the point where they could hear my diary 3 doors down at the police station. Really? It's the hospital. I don't know for no. Anyway, this sounds like a joke. It's my wife. Anyway.
The question of what to do next is paramount
what
at
else
this
did they
particular time. And
I thought that was. I thought it was
disagrees over what they
these
should
cookies.
And the main disagreement is within the United States chain of command. The Army and the Navy have different ideas
Really?
on how the rest of the war
Which
should
is
go.
really nice.
Both sides
Really?
would like to sort of
To
get
have
them
fruit
at
is
least
nice.
off the coast
I
of
had
Japan as the end destination. But the
And,
path to get there, well, the Navy has one
I remember I
idea.
had eaten it all. I was very, very hungry.
He's a tough customer. And the Army in this situation, he's not the general with the George Marshall, but the guy whose opinion matters in this situation, their old friend Douglas, the situation MacArthur, who comes to Hawaii in mid-1944 for a big strategy conference over what to do next. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt's going to be there, which is a huge deal. When you look at how
Anyway,
really sick Franklin Roosevelt is in mid-1944, it is not too
But
much
what?
to say that he is dying. I've read a bunch of good books lately that talk about how pretty
Well,
much
I was very
everyone who
hungry when I
hadn't seen
got there.
him for a while is shocked when they do.
Then after a couple days, you're so sick of the food.
Left.
It's
And by
like,
the way, Roosevelt is running for office at this time for his fourth. No other president has ever been elected.
and you're thinking like, I'm
twice,
never
run twice.
gonna know what it's like
Roosevelt
to
is
taste
dying. He's
regular
going
food
for his
again.
return.
And the worst part of it was the fear of the unknown. I got there and I'm like, I don't know how long I'm here here.
Reality series.
And I'm like asking the guards and they won't tell me anything. And I'm booked. They've gone through. They've got my fingerprints. They've done everything. I'm fucking been in cuffs for most of the day. And
Everybody's ready. And
so I
Douglas
knew I
MacArthur
was
is
there.
not there at the meeting.
They said I had a hearing on a
doesn't show up
Tuesday.
for 40 minutes.
And
And I love the way
I was really, really worried.
Jonathan W. Jordan
Why?
describes
Well, because I'm a
President
handful.
Roosevelt is on the
And
USS
so
Baltimore
if
with the
me in
Navy
jail,
guys, and they've been waiting for
fuck,
like 40 minutes.
I'm gonna be screaming.
Narrative picks
And
up,
I remember looking
40
out the
minutes
fucking
after
windows of
Baltimore's
jail
gangplank was lowered to the pier,
like Kramer.
the air was split by the shriek of a police siren.
I did that.
A motorcycle escort appeared.
And I remember
What
this, the
Sam
fucking
Rosen
everything is so
remembered as,
thick
quote,
there.
the
And it's
longest
just
open
like
car I've ever seen. In front was a chauffeur in khaki, and in the back,
Really?
one lone figure. End quote. Jordan
And what?
continues, quote, that figure wore a crushed general's
Oh, but
hat
this guy.
and a brown
What about
leather
him?
jacket.
Well,
Mr.
I asked him.
Ketch
So he's like, so what'd you do? I was like, I made threats
Mr. Ketch was
allegedly using an electronic device, but I don't really know what that means. He's like, that's some shit.
This was Mr. Ketch. Mr.
He's
Ketch
like,
had arrived. MacArthur's car
That's
drove
it?
to the gangplank to the wild applause of the
He's
crowd.
like, you posted something
He
on the
bounded
internet?
up the ramp, stopping halfway to acknowledge another round of
I'm like,
applause,
why?
then
Why, man,
strode
why are you
onto the
here?
cruiser's deck. He saluted the
Honestly, I don't
commander-in-chief
fucking remember what he said.
before shaking
It was
Roosevelt's
something like this.
outstretched hand.
Well, I remember two
Hello,
guys,
Douglas,
or one
said
other guy.
Roosevelt. What are you doing with that
he
leather
said-
jacket on? It's darn hot today. Well, I've just
My
landed
one
from
friend, though,
Australia.
inspired me to do my own,
It's pretty cold up there. End quote.
like, personal recollection on camera. When he did his, it was like I started recording my life. Really, that was right at George
In
Bush.
fact, that's his branding, like the corncob pipe and the crushed hat.
Really? Yeah.
And he's in
I
Hawaii.
announced to be a rabbi
And he
that
shows up in the
next
whole
day or
car
something like that. That's
because
what my
he's
dad
in
was.
costume. I mean, uniform.
Anyway,
He's an interesting.
but no one else is being a rabbi.
And we said
Not
this
that I'm a
before.
rabbi.
You have to acknowledge, I think, anyway, Douglas MacArthur's
Are you done?
military talent. Sometimes he does extraordinary things, but he is an interesting guy. Talks
So then what did you
about
do? 'Cause this is
himself
all
in
really
the
fucking
third
bullshit.
person, as we said before. No one who talks about himself in the third person is your normal kind of customer. Just gonna
Lamb chops
quick
play
statement about that.
Really? Yeah.
George likes spicy chicken.
Becomes a big thing. Why? Because this was focused on theirs, and they just play that over and over. Oh,
MacArthur's favorite pronoun
that's
is
what jail is.
I.
Or in the future, if you want to just like drive someone nuts, you just play that song all the time and make them stare at a wall. There's nothing worse than that. Really?
I shall return. It's one of the most famous phrases of all time. As we pointed out at the time, there were a bunch of historians and contemporaries were saying, you know, he should have said the United States will return. But he made it personal. And because he made it personal, it's one of the things that goes into his argument that he makes at the strategy conference about what should happen next. We should go back to the Philippines and return. He gave a whole host of good reasons why that should be the way. Sort of to Japan,
And
take
it just
the
over
Philippines.
and over, it
We
drives
promise
people
those
nuts.
people get POWs in there that the Japanese will kill us. A lot of good reasons.
And it just
But
staring
part
at
of it
staring
was
at a wall. It's the worst.
he made a
Anyway.
promise. This was wrapped up
Really?
in his destiny.
Yeah,
somehow.
you torture them.
He
You
went
could,
through the Philippines,
but
and he'd go up toward Okinawa,
it's actually
which is,
worse
it's
that they think they're
Japanese,
gonna
but
get
not
tortured the whole
Japanese. It
time.
depends on who you
Really?
talk to.
Yeah.
Talk to an Okinawan.
So you'd be like, all right,
Sometimes-
well,
but it's
the torture
considered
will
a
be
whole
here,
island, and then from
and then
Okinawa,
just close
you
the
can
door.
go.
And then they
Americans
don't know.
is a
Really?
place that
Yeah.
can serve
Why?
the same
Wouldn't it be
role
worse to just
Great
torture them the whole
Britain
time?
serves.
Well, if it's like
In
you
the
can only
Normandy
torture someone so
land,
fucking
you were
long
today at a
physically
place where you
before
get
you'll
your
kill
people
them.
together, all the
So it's
supplies
like
you need,
if you have
and
unlimited
build
amount of
up
time with this
across
person,
the
just
water
tell them
from
that
there.
the torture is
Supply
gonna come.
helps right off
And
the
then
shore.
7 years later, bring
Promise
the
is there's
torture.
nothing right off the shore from
I'm
Japan.
fucked
So
up.
if
I
you
know.
take the Philippines,
Anyway, so I was in jail with this
decide that this is
motherfucker,
going to
and
be your big supply hub.
I said, "So how long have you been?"
For the eventual
He's
invasion of
like,
Japan, it's still a
"Well,
long sea ride to
this time
Japan
around,
from there.
it was
The
like
Navy, Ernest King, Admiral Ernest King,
3 months or
has said,
something.
he wanted to come himself,
But he'd been there like 30 months prior,
had a
something like
strategy
that.
session between a guy like
Did like,
MacArthur and a guy like
and
King. We talked about what they were like earlier. It might have been too many
3
sparks
years.
for Franklin Delano
Why?
Roosevelt to keep them.
I don't want to be like, oh, armed robbery or anything like that, because I would just tell him straight up, I don't fucking remember.
Not having a spine, he'll never remember.
I remember this other guy, but I don't remember his story. But I do remember he
statements and Douglas MacArthur prevails in the strategy session because the Navy
and
wants to go take
he
Formosa, which is modern day Taiwan,
made murder songs.
and use that as the big supply base. They can start the Japan.
And when I did that thing in the fucking Well, I remember I didn't know when they were gonna let me out or when my court date was or anything.
But that doesn't stop the
Fortunately, it was
Navy and
Tuesday,
the island
so I was brought in on
known
like
for a long time.
Friday.
Marianas Island
Was it
Tammy.
that
We just
long?
talked about
Was
the
it
latest
Friday?
island hop. So that's going to continue through the Central Pacific too. So think of two routes of approach to Japan. MacArthur's going to go up through the Philippines, and that route, the U.S. fleet and the Marines and some Army help is going to go
I gotta think which
Central
time it
Pacific.
was.
Next major stop on the list, Iwo Jima. But there's going to be a little quick thing that the Navy wants to take care of first. Or
Why
we've
the fuck
read a lot
did
about this because it's
Oh no, that was a
controversy.
Sunday I
How
was
an
arrested. No,
island shape,
it was a Sunday I was arrested.
the island
Why?
shape
Because I sent out a bunch of
contains
emails.
the island.
I got one now with another
There's a
state
lot of history
and a
that
bounty
suggests
hunter.
that it's
Anyway,
supposed to be closed off.
Sunday I was arrested.
It's interesting. The
I just
reason
had a
it
court
actually
date on
matters is
Tuesday.
because what will
And
happen on Peleliu
but on
is
Monday,
not what is
like
expected to
you're
happen
just
on
processed all
Peleliu.
day,
When things go
and
wrong,
it's like,
people ask questions for a long time afterwards.
when's the next thing? How long am I here? I didn't know how long the punishment was for this fucking crime. I didn't know I was there. And fortunately, I saw a judge and a good attorney who was like,
the Philippines a ways. And
I'm like,
one of the arguments for why this was necessary is it was going to
I'm like, I have my arrest on camera. One of my arrests. It's like, what? He's like, yeah, it's already uploaded to the internet. Put in hashtag Rabbi arrest. And he does. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, this is 39 minutes long. I'm like, well, yeah, because it's like a long video of me like talking about my bloodline and stuff. And he's like, okay, well, I don't have time to watch this right now. I've got like 5 minutes to prepare your case. So I was like, well, all right. He's like, let me just, it's like, you're not a danger to you or society or anything like that, right? No. Okay. It's like, I'm going to just try to get you out as soon as possible, and you'll have another court hearing or something like that. And so what? So here was the thing. They said, all right, so you're going to get out. I was court on like Tuesday. I think I got out on
to take them back at super high cost because the Japanese were going to reinforce these places
Thursday morning at like
steel doors and everything like something out of James Bond film. But they never really did that.
But they told me.
Very much.
So I met the judge on Tuesday. And so you're going to get out on Wednesday.
The model home.
And I said, okay,
the Japanese would
you're sure?
Seen all these islands
And the judge said, the guards were like, yeah.
When you have metal doors that open up and the gun pops up
So
and
Wednesday
fires
comes
goes
around.
back
I'm like, this is a long time. I mean, these are just, I didn't spend 20 years in jail, 16 years in jail, 40 years in jail, unjustified, like some support people that go and try to get justice for all of them, get them money back, because they had their lives stolen from them. But anyway,
usually around 110 degrees or more in the daytime on a rock. This is one of those campaigns, by the way, that you wish there was more visual
so what?
to see photographs, movies, those kind of things. But I read that because the military had told the media that this was going to be over in 2 or 4 days, really quick, short fight.
But I mean,
Most of them
this is
chose
my
to go
experience.
elsewhere.
It's terrible.
Lots of their stories.
And,
MacArthur,
is there anything positive about it?
they'll cover that so you don't get
Because I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. So I, it's not like I had to feel, oh, I wish I hadn't done it. I mean, I'd fucking do it again. And I just didn't think, I went up against the man, basically, like, you fight the law wins. And, but I fucking sneaked my way in. If you've seen this one days, you'll see, started from the bottom, now we're here, we're gonna fucking win this one, and you'll know the whole story. And it's like, oh, you didn't do anything wrong, dude. Oh my God, you're a fucking hero to the world. Like, fuck yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, but if you only see a snapshot of it, it's like, oh, you look guilty as fuck. Anyway, not really. I mean, not really at all.
And then the bombers come in, strafe the pitches, bomb the heck out of everything. But the Japanese don't do what they've done in their other battles. No bonsai charges.
Is that the only other story?
Waste away their strength, none of that sort of stuff. They're going to oppose the American landing on the beach lightly, but then require the Americans to go and get them prepared positions. What is one of the
No. So the guy had,
was designed by Japanese engineers.
they had a couple sandwiches.
500 tunnels.
There's cookies.
Mining purposes, so they're interconnected, and they go to logical
I think a
places
couple
that they're
apples or
designed
something.
to-
Yeah, apples. I think pears or oranges.
times on this island with the
And what?
Americans can hear and know that the Japanese are under them, in the ground.
He was very nice for having murdered someone. Oh, I couldn't remember why I was there. So I was like, what did you do? He's like, and I don't even know if he was there like 3 months. I don't want to piss this guy off. He killed him. But he would not be prosecuted for this death. Why?
The Americans had little
What's done is that we go back and try to get the guy, though. And he'd be a lesson, though. You're ever in jail, don't snitch on people. Why? It won't get you anywhere. It'll just get you killed. Really?
Was a series of jagged coral ridge lines.
People like Martha Stewart 10 toes down. And then when you get out, you get rewarded. Really?
Blast walls of reinforced
If you go in there and you're like, XYZ did this and XYZ did that, that's cool. XYZ will just tell somebody in jail, kill this motherfucker, and you're dead.
In the larger cave fortresses,
If you get out, then XYZ might say, hey, thanks for not fucking blowing the whistle on me. I got a job for you. And that's how you could fucking get out.
one large cave
Really?
was discovered.
Now, what if the police offer you a deal? That's cool, but then you gotta go witness protection and you better fucking hide the fuck out. Really? And it's hard nowadays, fucking hiding out. Facial recognition and shit. Yeah, beyond. I mean, if somebody wants to find me, they'll find me. Alright, are you done?
Prepared German trenches that had the guns sighted and crossfire
Well, this
set
story
up
sucks.
and
Really? Oh, I made Jill. Anyway, so this guy had bologna sandwiches. These like vanilla cookies and
armed and equipped people designed to
like
get in quickly, bypass strong
It wasn't
This is going to throw them right into the teeth of
I know,
all this.
thing of orange.
This is where
Thank
some
you.
criticism, by the way, of
Really? Yeah.
and this is where the more
He asked me, do you want anything?
fantastic accounts of
And I'd be like, man, I'm like an unofficial competitive eater. Nobody knows it. I could eat all that shit. But honestly, you just don't. You're just sick. You're so sick of that food already that I just remember being like, nah, I'm good. But I think back, well, how would it work? If I eat that food, then I owe that motherfucker. And I think he would say, then you owe me. And even though it's your first, you weren't here that long. It's like it's the law of fucking
in your mind's eye picture
jail.
the old man Eugene Sledge doing the things
Not
the
that
young
it's
man
free.
Eugene Sledge
Nobody
had
does
to
anything
do.
just to be a nice person in jail.
But that's part of
In
it.
life,
It's more
but
important
especially in jail.
that all these people were like
But at the
him,
time,
and that the war made them do
I probably
live
would have eaten it.
the most
Well, I didn't, but
outrageously extreme thing.
if I was hungry enough,
Sledge
I definitely
talks
would have.
about
And then what?
hitting the beach moment.
Well, then I'd be like,
She
this
says it's
motherfucker
like
killed the guy. I want to be on his team.
Yeah,
We have a
the
fucking ride.
Amtrak is moving from the ships toward the shore, and one of the other
What are
soldiers
you,
pulls
airport?
out some whiskey and
So
says,
that's what they said to me,
"Well,
too.
this is it,
They
boys."
said, what are you?
Sledge
This guy,
says,
this was
"Just
the
like
worst part of it, though. I was
the
blind the whole time in jail. I didn't have my glasses,
It's not
and I couldn't see. And that meant
at all.
everything was blind. So I had to really rely on other people to tell me stuff. That's what scared me so
Shells
much,
crashed all around.
was
Fragments tore and whirred, slapping on the
they had
sand
like a
and
little
splashing
thing where
into
you
the
could, a
water
call
of the
box you
guards
could call,
behind us. The Japanese were
which
recovering
I didn't
from the
really
shock
know
of our
that there was a
landing
call box there because I was
bombardment.
blind. I
Their
couldn't see.
machine gun and rifle
I
fire
asked
got
for
bigger,
glasses.
snapping
They said that
viciously overhead and increasing volume.
You don't get your glasses
Our
in jail
Amtrak,
because they can be used as a weapon.
spun around and headed back out as
So,
I reached the end of the
There
beach
was
and
a,
flattened
they
on
could
the
make you
deck.
glasses, but it
The
took
world
several
was a
weeks.
nightmare of flashes,
Oh
violent
my God, I'm
explosions,
here blind without,
snapping
this is
bullets.
awful.
Most of what I
It was
saw
awful.
blurred. My mind was benumbed by the shock of
Like,
it.
who do you run with?
I glanced
So I
back
remember, though,
across the beach and saw a
asking
dock
for
and rubber tire
glasses.
his truck.
Shout out to
Rolled
this
up on
one
the
guy.
sand at a
I
point
feel so
near where
badly
we had
for this.
just
I think I
landed.
feel so badly for
The
this for the rest of
instant
the
the
time.
duck
He
stopped,
wrote
it was
his
engulfed
request.
in
He had a
thick,
medical
dirty
request. He
black
had
smoke
severe
as
tooth
shells
pain,
scored a direct hit on
and I
Bits
couldn't
of
see,
debris
and I was
flew into the
looking
air.
for one of
I
these
watched
forms,
with that
and I
odd
couldn't
detached
find one. He had the only one.
peculiar
It's not like I wrote, I crossed his thing out or whatever, or threw his thing out. But I just remember not being able to help him. This guy had severe tooth pain, and this fucking thing was just being thrown It was like a piece of paper that was just nobody about which nobody cared. And I was blind. I couldn't be like, "Hey, guard, this guy is having trouble."
Made long splashes of water.
But I could barely make that out. Like reading the card up here.
Geysers
But,
belched up relentlessly.
Anyway.
Mortar and artillery
Oh, but it was at that
We
spot
caught a fleeting glimpse
where
of
this
a
guy
group of
goes,
Marines leaving a smoking
"Who you run
Amtrak on the reef.
We're like, "Huh?
Some
Who you
fell
with?"
as bullets and fragments
And like,
splashed
"Is it gang?"
among them. Their buddies tried to help them as they struggled in knee-deep
I ain't
water.
in no gang.
I shuddered and choked.
Turns out I don't have a
A
choice.
wild, desperate
Everybody
feeling
feels
of
immediately
anger,
assigned to,
frustration, and
for
pain.
better or worse.
It was an emotion that always would torture my mind. When I saw
For
men
want of a better
trapped
word, again,
and was unable to do anything but watch.
which are mainly separated by race.
My own
There
plight
are
forgotten
four.
momentarily.
Brothers,
I felt
Woods,
sickened to the
homies,
depths
Tyson.
of my soul. I asked
Brothers,
God,
that's us, is
why,
white guy. Woods,
why?
white guy.
I turned my
Homies
face
are
away,
Mexican Americans
wishing
who
I
speak
were
English
imagining
classes.
it all.
Mexicans
I
who
had
don't.
tasted the bitterest
What makes
essence of war.
I'm ready to
The
discover.
sight of helpless comrades
home.
being slaughtered.
And in this jail,
filled me with
homies
disgust.
is dominant race. How about what was in your jail? Definitely dominant. Homies was dominant race. I'm going to tell you more. We read that other individual laws. There's a homie law here. See, every place has two people in charge. Shot caller and the rep. Shot caller makes the decision for each race. The rep speaks for them. Shot caller is the dominant race essentially in charge of the whole jail. It doesn't matter if you're in Berwick, Raymond, or
As we disembarked,
life with
I
some
looked up
people
and
are.
down the beaches, and
It
all
was
you
a part
could
of
hear was screaming, and men were falling and dying. There was
My set
artillery,
of rules
mortar, and machine
written
gun
down from
fire
the back of a Bible.
constantly.
I'm
We
told
fought all
I have a
day,
3-day grace
and by
period
evening we reached the
within
airstrip about a half
which I can
mile from the
contravene
beach.
without
We set
fear
up
of
for the night
reprisal.
along the sides of the airstrip.
After that, though,
The temperature
I
was
warned
from
there are
102
consequences.
degrees at night
It could be
to
a workout.
120 degrees in
It could be a
daytime.
2-on-1. I'll get to
We went
that in
in
a
with
minute.
2 canteens of water. That's a gallon of
Some
water.
of the rules made sense. Some were really surprising. Some were pretty racist, and I
By
didn't really
noontime,
know. They really understand.
we're out of
All
water.
in my bed. For example, you have to make your bed every morning. This is something I thought the guards would enforce, but it's actually the inmates. There are a lot of rules about eating. You must dine with your own group, and as a group, when you're finished, everyone bangs the table and gives thanks. Everybody cleans up after themselves. No one leaves until everyone is done, and absolutely no one needs the toilet while everyone's eating. This is a big one. I forgot and went to take a whiz once during a mealtime. Thank Christ it was during my 3-day grace period. While trading food is allowed, we're not allowed to trade open food with brothers. You can give or take a sealed packet of chips, for example, but not an open bag under any circumstances. I'm still not sure why. Everyone must wear their college looks and their college being your uniform. Mine is white slippers, orange trousers, white t-shirt, orange shirt, buttons, always. Each race has their own dress code, however, the brothers were trying to wear just like that. The rule which surprised me most was that we were not to discriminate female staff. There were medically female staff who came into the administrative not to be given speak to them just because they definitely do not come onto them or try to chat them. That was something I would try to do. Also, you must pay 10% tax. As a commissary, I think there's a convenience store you can buy things like extra around, which is tricky to cook with no boiling water or microwave. That's what we're talking about, jail ramen. Just hot water and a lot of time. Or slippers like, or items like slippers, toothbrush, you build up credit either by working in jail or by family.
James Jones, who was in the Pacific War. And he's talking about these artists. And he says this about Tom Lee, quote, Lee was one of the artists put into the field by Life magazine after their takeover of the defunct army program. Various of his works appeared in the magazine, and up until the time he went into Peleliu, most of them could be pretty well classified as excellently done, but high-grade propaganda. There was very little American blood.
So what do you think? Well, I was just like, I don't.
Mostly it was what could be called the Bravo America, and this is
But
your boy.
I could also have seen that guy who could have been like, yeah, I would have just given you that sandwich. I was already getting, and that was the thing. He was already getting out, so he didn't give a shit. That's kind of what it was too. He was already getting out. Have a fucking thing. He could give a shit. Oh, why was he there though? I don't remember.
The pictures painted out of his
Was
Peleliu
it violent
experience
or anything?
show a new approach.
Well, he murdered
There is
the one
the
guy.
tension of terror that bodies here, and the distorted facial
But
expressions of the men under fire show it.
that was a fellow inmate with whom he was living. So like somebody like I was there. He had Uh,
into this as a kid. See,
it was always like some bullshit, but it was like he was at a place where two other guys were, and the other two guys were the guys who were really doing something, and
he had done a piece of art showing
he was
what
just there,
soldiers
and they
looked
charged
like
him.
after combat.
Really, it was something like
Today,
that.
we recognize it as what's
And-
sometimes called combat neuroses.
But he was getting out, and he wasn't really happy or anything. He was just like, okay. So what happened to you?
So-called 2,000-yard stare.
Well, I remember when they moved me. I was in
He, meaning Marine, left the States 31
solitary
months ago.
confinement for a little
He was
while.
wounded in his first campaign.
For like a night,
He has had
and then
tropical
they
diseases.
moved me next door
He half sleeps at
with
night,
this guy. What's his
gouges
name? I
chaps
don't
out of
remember.
holes all
Honestly,
day.
it was a terrible
2/3 of
time.
his
So I
company has
shouldn't
been
have
killed or
really
wounded. He
but it
will
really
return
happened.
to attack this
The
morning.
fucking cameras are still
How
going.
much
I
can he
fucking
be
walk.
endure?
Anyway,
He also was the one who
I don't
painted
remember.
a painting called The Price.
But
This was a very controversial piece. It was published by Life magazine. E.W. Toll says people complained and canceled their subscriptions because it showed Marine suffering when Marine really suffered. And he was accused of embellishing and over-dramatizing something, which, if you think about it, sounds silly. He's over-dramatizing war, and Lee fought back, saying every single painting he did showed what he really saw. And the painting, The Price, I'm not the only guy, by the way. I was doing research on this and found that other people were similarly affected. If you're not used to seeing your own side as war victims, when an artist paints it, and this showed a photo, almost photorealistic quality, of a Marine who had been hit by mortar fire on the beach at Peleliu as Tom Lee watched, and his arm is destroyed and half his face is gone. And he described it this way. He said, I fell flat on my face just as I heard the whoosh of a mortar that I knew was too close. A red flash stabbed at my eyeballs. About 15 yards away on the upper edge of the beach, it smashed down 4 men from our boat. One figure seemed to fly to pieces. With terrible clarity, I saw the head and one leg sail into the air. I got up, ran a few steps, and fell into a small hole as another mortar burst through dirt on me. Lying there in terror, looking longingly up the slope for better cover, I saw a wounded man near me, staggering in the direction of the LVTs, the landing vehicles. His face was half bloody pulp, and the mangled shreds of what was left of an arm hung down like a stick. As he bent over in his stumbling, shock-crazy walk, the half of his face that was still human had the most terrifying look of abject patience I've ever seen. He fell behind me in a red puddle of the white sand. End quote. But to me, this isn't gratuitous to say
well,
these
actually,
things.
86 in yourself and
This
in
is
another
what
world with
makes
exactly
what
what
these
words Tim Keller
Marines
did.
did. And yes,
But
let's
that
be
is
fair,
not
what the
chosen
Japanese
option.
resisting them also did. What it is. If you have some easy run and nobody gets hurt, well, it's a different style of thing, isn't it? The reason Peleliu elicits the kind of admiration and horror that it does is because that's not what happens. These men have to see things like this, or experience it, and then keep going. And as I said, I'm not a glory person. I don't think shooting and killing other people is glorious, but there is something heroic about being able to keep going when assaulted by these sorts of sights and sounds, and
Anyways, at the end of the story,
possible
no.
damage to yourself. And I bring, by the way, the heroism
So
down
what do you think it would have been?
to 2 separate
Well, I think it would have been much more like all
categories
those
of
systems.
heroism.
We read that
While
before.
these soldiers and Marines, and yes, Japanese soldiers too, while they're actually fighting and dying in combat, and then the different kind of heroism that comes trying to reestablish some sort of a normal life when you go home and have to live with all of this stuff in your memory banks for maybe decades. As I believe I mentioned earlier, I used to talk to American veterans of the Second World War, and specifically the ones that were the most difficult nuts to crack were those from the Pacific.
Where do we learn, kids? Snitches don't get stitches. Snitches get
Children
sheets.
have seen the most combat.
You survive with
They're trying
stitches.
to grapple with.
Sheets, you
And
dead,
how can they ever
motherfucker.
explain it to you? The things that sledges
Sheet
go
over
through,
you
there are
dead.
3 or 4 things.
But they strangle this guy to death.
You go, okay, this is something that's going to stay with you the rest of your life. I mean, all of it will be, but there are
Why?
certain things where you just go, holy cow. And Sledge had said once that if you were
So anyway,
100 yards behind
this guy
the
just told you that,
line,
and it was like no big deal.
you could be a rear support
Why?
person.
Nobody.
still be in
When you're
great
behind
danger.
bars,
So
nobody. If you die
it's
behind bars,
different.
nobody's
We said
gonna
this
say.
in the
Nobody's
last
gonna
segment,
fucking say
last part
anything
of the show,
about
I'm
you.
sure, where it's different.
I know
when
someone
you're
else, but someone who died behind bars, and
you absolutely every single day are
even there,
going
like,
from
we'd have
one
to help
position to
fucking
another
family
position to
to
another position, rooting out, killing the people in each of these
That was
positions.
bad. It's also
Sledge says the worst experience he ever had in the Second
You
World
get him
War
back.
was on a pellet trying to cross an open airfield, which a lot of the soldiers
He was
remember.
like hung
Under
outside
artillery
fucking
and mortar fire, he said, quote,
Central Tower.
to be shelled
Jail.
by massed artillery and mortars is absolutely
Town.
terrifying. But to be
That's
shelled in
like
the
serious
open
bomb.
is
Yeah.
terror compounded
What is
beyond
this?
the belief of anyone who hasn't experienced it. The attack across Peleliu's airfield was the worst combat experience I had during the entire war. It surpassed, by the intensity of the blast and shock of the bursting shells, all the subsequent horrifying ordeals on Peleliu and Okinawa. That sort of mirrors what ROTHSCHILD in his fabulous book on the First World War, Storm of Steel, had said about artillery. He said that being an artillery attack was like being tied to a stake, having somebody swinging at your head with a sledgehammer over and over again, and just
Yeah,
missing by a
yeah.
little, but you were sure that the next shot of the sledgehammer was going to get you.
So I think he would have probably said,
That artillery,
had I been there for 30 months or whatever, yeah, that motherfucker would own me. But I was getting out. He could have had the fucking challenge. Really? But what I would want people to know, if you ever have to go to jail,
this is not what you're
don't think like, oh, yeah.
where you're ready to take on the enemy and deal with shooting at somebody or being shot at. But he talks about, for example,
Everything
one incident where we're all on patrol at
Right.
night on Peleliu, and it's dark and they're trying to maintain quiet and secrecy, and one of their guys cracks up and starts raving and screaming and threatening the whole unit. And they don't know what to do. They're panicking. What do we do with this guy? He's our friend. He's our buddy. So first they try to give him
He didn't
morphine.
tell me. I was like, I was very cold. And that's the thing in jail, you can't ever get your body temperature
Officers where the sergeant says, use an entrenching tool, knock him out.
above
They
a
hit him
certain
in the
level
head
sometimes.
with a shovel.
The showers don't get hot,
He dies.
so it's like
The person who hit him in the head with a shovel has to live with that the rest of his life. You know, it's one
you're
thing to
just
say, I
cold,
killed
and then you
the
take a cold shower, so you're just cold and
and
wet.
they did terrible things to our troops, so I don't feel bad about it. It's another thing to hit your own guy in the head with an entrenching tool and kill him. Sledge
And you
tells a worse
sit
story
there
than
and
that
shake,
later on when
and
he's talking about
there's
this
no
is
way
like
to like
horror movie stuff,
warm yourself
like
up really.
jump scare horror stuff.
You can't
The
get your body
Japanese at night,
temperature
with their
to where it needs
infiltration
to be.
tactics,
And I guess you
drove the
can,
Americans crazy.
but here's what happens.
Over and over, you read
Because you
this
take a shot,
with
shit freezing
right?
out. Then you can like warm up and like run around in a little fucking cell, and now you're sweaty as fuck,
guard,
and you're still cold and sweaty
every single sound
because
was the Japanese.
you can't get your
Come close to the
extremities
foxholes and scream
really
things at you to keep you on edge.
Why? Because
Sometimes
you're in
they
like
do
a
one that's
jumpsuit or like
grab a
basically
couple
like
of edged weapons and jump into some of these foxholes. And not only did the people in the foxholes who all of a sudden had Japanese in their foxholes with
they have
them
this fucking
have to deal with
television.
them, so did every American
They have a television.
around
Oh my
that
god,
foxhole.
I would have
What
rather
was
not have
happening.
television.
I read
It was
this over and
worse.
over again.
Why?
Different
They
Marines
had
in different books talking
one
about the
television in this
sounds.
one fucking room
What does it sound like when one
where
guy
it
is
played
gouging
3
out
fucking
another guy's eyes? It
commercials.
kills
That's
him
all
by
it was.
doing that.
It was just 3 fucking
Sledge says,
commercials.
quote,
It was something
with
on
a
getting
wild
the
yell,
COVID
the Japanese
vaccine,
jumped into the hole with the
getting
two
a
Marines.
booster
A
for your
frantic,
COVID
desperate,
vaccine, and wearing a
hand-to-hand
face.
struggle
These
ensued,
are the 3
accompanied by the most gruesome combination of curses, wild babbling,
and
animalistic guttural noises
then
and
what?
grunts, sounds of men hitting each other and thrashing around.
I
came
remember
from
just
the
thinking, this is the
foxhole.
worst television I've ever seen. And it was like a weird television.
That's combat, right?
Like jail TV,
Some
it
nightmares
was kind of like that.
That's what happens.
Then I
next.
got
They give
into
you the
this other
terrified
bigger room
thing when Sledge says a man
where
jumps
like
out of the foxhole
where there was a TV
and
with Star
starts
Wars.
running in the dark toward the
And this
other
television
foxholes. So a Marine
show,
stands up, uses his
all
gun
it
like a
did was
club, and
play
smacks the figure in the head,
like
knocking
Discovery
him down.
Channel,
That figure stays around in the dark,
Gold.
and thrashing around until another Marine goes up and shoots him in the head.
like Ice Road Trucker, Gold
They find
Rush
out that it
shit.
wasn't Japanese.
Deadliest Catch kind of deal. Really?
Fletcher says,
It was like stuff that you'd watch
a
that,
few
that
hours
really like.
later, as objects around
I
me
don't
became
think I've learned
faintly
anything
visible
from it.
at
Maybe
the
I've learned a
dawn,
little bit from
I
it.
noticed that
But
the
it was like
still
you literally
line
watched
to
this
my left
television
didn't appear
and you wouldn't know
Japanese.
where,
It was either
like,
an enemy
there was
marine
nothing political
dungarees or
about it. You wouldn't learn
leggings,
anything
or
from
it
it, is what
was
I'm
a
trying to say.
marine.
There was
I
no
went over
books.
to find out which.
There were no
Before I got
books.
to the prone
At
body,
least
its
when I was there.
identity was obvious
I wasn't
to
there
me.
that long.
My God, I said in horror.
But
Several men looked at me
when
and
they
asked
had
what
a
was the matter.
free time,
It's Bill.
I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't see the door. I couldn't even see to
He
get
was
out.
asked by the officer.
And I was like holding onto the railing to get down the stairs. And I just remember being like, the guards were like, you have 15 minutes.
Just looked at him with a
You got
blank
1
stare
hour
and felt
or
sick.
1
I
30-minute
looked at
break
the
or
man
something.
who had crawled
So you were
past
in
me
your
to check on the
yourself
groaning
for
man in the dark.
23 hours
He
or
had
something.
shot Bill through the
And
temple,
they're like, you got
mistakenly
one,
assuming him to be Japanese. He says, as
you,
the realization
23 hours
of
and
his
30
fatal
minutes, I think.
mistake hit him,
You got 30
the
minutes.
man's face turned
And
ashen.
where did the guys go?
His jaw trembled.
I don't even know. I don't even know if there was a yard. Really?
This is something
There was, because guys went out there, but it was like,
when you go to kill the enemy.
there was
so
no
much better after reading Sledge's
handball, all this fun shit
So
that
hard,
Joey Diaz
sometimes
made it,
impossible
like what it
to
made
get
it sound like.
into
There's no
specific
handball
graduates, especially these
competitions.
Christians,
Shit.
to tell
It was
you
more like
much
what
about
game,
their
what
experience,
game.
because how could you
Why?
have
Because he was in
understood
prison. In
what
prison
sort
and
of
jail are different.
context did
And he
you
was in
have
Boulder
to
jail, which is like
properly assess what this person
fucking
was trying to make you
Club Med.
understand?
I was in Orange County
Sledge
jail, which
addresses
is
this too,
fucking,
says, quote,
aside from LA jail,
to the
LA
non-combatants
County jail,
and those on the periphery
Orange County
of
jail
action,
is
the war meant only boredom or
the toughest
occasional
west
excitement.
of Chicago.
But to those who entered the meat grinder itself, the war was a netherworld of horror, from which escape seemed less and less likely as casualties mounted and the fighting dragged on and on. Time had no meaning. Life had no meaning. The fierce struggle for survival
Really?
in the abyss of
People
hell
die in that jail all the
eroded
time,
the
and
veneer of
nobody does
civilization
anything
made
about it.
savages of
And
us
I
all.
know how you can die
We
there.
existed in an environment totally incomprehensible
When
to
they
men
killed that
behind
guy,
the lines.
I said
Service troops
to them,
and civilians.
I said to the guy,
End quote.
you guys just
Look at
killed
the
him?
casualties on
Like,
Pebble,
yep,
8,000.
with the sheet
Roughly
over the
about
balcony.
16 or 17 dead,
And
which doesn't sound like a lot until you
then we
realize
just
the size of the
let his
island.
body
It was a
hang,
Tarawa,
and it
the
dropped
numbers of
it
Tarawa in the Gilbert
and let
Islands
the
earlier
fucking
this
sheet.
year.
Like, I remember like thinking like the sheet
3
fell on
days
him,
of fighting
and
for another little tiny spit
they
of
just
nothing.
walked away.
Land-wise.
3 guys that
If
walked
you could
away.
divide the casualties by the square
I
footage
was
of
like,
the battlefield, you could see how particularly nasty these
and nobody
pursuit
did
battles
anything.
were. And
So,
you don't
like,
even
isn't
have
it
to
on
do that for the
camera or
Japanese
anything?
because they lose between
They're
11
like, it might be, but
13,000
nobody's doing
men.
anything about it.
Their commanding
And then I
officer
started
orders
thinking,
the
I mean, not
campaign
thinking, but I started looking around. It's like, there's so much of this place that is not on camera. They could just fuck you up. Be like, oh, we don't know what happened.
Small handful of
And not even if like you have it on camera, is it safe? It's difficult to get cameras. I really think that jails should be 24 hours a day. You should be able to see what's going on. Really.
Don't do so until 1947, 2 years after the war is over. Does that tell you how committed they were to resisting?
But make them
How hard
better.
an opponent
People,
they
they
were.
should be able to play Madden and shit.
The First Marine Division, especially.
Anyway, this fucking television thing what we watched,
Severely chewed up. The first regiment, I believe,
I
suffers
couldn't
twice
see.
as
I could
many,
not see it. So for me to be
casualties
like,
as is normally
it was-
considered to be, a unit that's just
it was
completely
Discovery
out of
Channel or
order,
something like that.
takes
I
months to
don't think so. Well, I think it was, but I don't.
Some of the
It
worst,
wasn't.
if not the worst, casualty rates that we suffer.
Well,
Ever.
in the leave-in, it was the last time I watched television, and that was the second time I was arrested. And
It's not hard to see
I passed the
how an
flying
event
colors.
like Peleliu
So they're like, there's nothing
gets
wrong with it.
downplayed. After all,
But
the country
anyway,
that was not exercising
what
a
about-
high level of censorship when it comes to showing their public back home what the war was really like. I mean, most Americans got their visual impressions of what the war looked
was the
like.
last time I watched television?
Real footage.
It was like a year ago.
Right?
Like sat and actually watched a television that was
You
hooked up
between two halves of a double feature, right?
to,
Escapist entertainment.
aside from like getting it on the internet. These aren't connected to channels or anything.
And you're confronted with Peleliu. How's that going to be?
And Snoop Dogg was on. With Corona. He was talking that shit.
Just get occasional
And
cards
then
from
they had, it was like Snoop Dogg's commercial,
and you see the
and then
footage of
Mike
Peleliu.
Tyson commercial. where he was on the news talking about Tyson Ranch and all of the holistic and positive things about cannabis, and it was like a place where you go and it was like a resort. And here I am in fucking jail, not knowing why. Well, that was the second week. I had been in jail, but then they had me in this fucking facility. But I was watching television, just being like, man, when I was a kid, these two motherfuckers were, you know, my mother would be like 700 miles away. She raised a really good kid, and he's in fucking jail. Not that.
While Pablo was being fought over, Douglas MacArthur's returning to the Philippines. And if you didn't know how big of an historical event this was,
Calvin brought
press
his
relations people would see to it that you did.
familial
But
unit.
Bellum is hardly the only thing that gets overshadowed by all of these big, exciting historical occasions that are much more positive and much
Or
better
Mike
than
Tyson's.
movie theater.
But they don't understand.
Two halves of the double feature.
Really?
I mean, how
How
about
the
submarine
media
warfare?
portrayed
What
it.
that's doing to the
Just like
Japanese.
Snoop going like this.
The non-sexy
With
side
fucking
of the
cuffs.
war is what we call it. The
Fucking Mike
logistics,
Tyson
the
with
supply.
cuffs, fucking like
What's
a
fascinating
jacket
to
over
me is
him.
not only are things like logistics and supply not all that interesting to
Both
me.
of them like the
Extremely,
innocent.
one of the
Really?
people who are war game the Second
One
World
of
War, I can honestly tell you, I've war gamed many
Definitely
times
found it.
Japanese naval combat. I have never
So
once
like
in my life
30 years go by, and now they're able to have the second half of their careers that are just totally different.
escort ship
Really,
tries to
really
catch the submarine
positive.
first. I mean,
And
not only do I not do that,
I'm
but the
sitting there in
Japanese
jail.
cadets at the Naval Academy don't want to do
or
that.
in a facility, because they didn't have that kind of television in facility. Or in jail. That had the news. That is a last, but we actually
And they
watched
all but
football,
say that.
and
Nobody cared about this. They
I
blame
was
it on
really
the
excited for
Japanese
this fucking
penchant
Pittsburgh
for the
Steelers
offense. Right? They
One
want
guy
the
really liked
colorful
fucking
offense.
Pittsburgh.
They want the
And
big decisive
so I was
naval
like, okay,
battles,
fuck
which
yeah,
by
I'm
the way,
fucking
the
getting this
Americans
fucking
and the
Pittsburgh game.
Japanese
Who was
both
playing?
subscribe to the
Pittsburgh
Mahan
and
idea of the decisive naval battle. So neither one of those countries' navies were really excited about things like commerce rating. But the Japanese didn't put any effort into it at all.
Anyway, shout out to the one guy.
One
I
admiral
remember
said that if they had thought the United States would use their submarines the way
Other
the Germans
people.
were
Anyway,
using
are you
their
done?
boats in the Atlantic
To
go after merchant shipping, they might not have launched the war
I
at
have this
all.
long
That
ass
shows you
video
how
of me
unprepared
in
they
the
were to
fucking
deal with it. And as we had said earlier, one of the things about naval
drive-through,
warfare
just like
is, in general, if you find out
Anyway,
that
are
you
you
haven't
done?
built the right ships, that is a problem that takes at least a couple of years to solve. Like when you find out because of experience in the Second World War that aircraft carriers are going to be the new queen of the seas and not
he's really
battleships.
pretty.
We don't magically
Yeah, I
have
know
aircraft
like
carriers.
3
You got to go and
of
make
the
some.
hottest
That
20
takes
women
years.
in the
So
state
if
of
you
California.
find out that you don't have enough escorts for your merchant ships, that's a problem you can't solve quickly. And it took the Japanese a while to realize it because it took the Americans and the other allies a while to
Maybe
really
more.
make a dent
But yeah,
in the
but I
enemy's
have 3 of the
commercial
short
shipping.
ones.
There's lots of reasons for this.
Yeah.
We mentioned one of
Anyway.
them earlier in the series.
Y'all
We talked
American
about
fuckers.
the absolute
The main thing I
terrible
want
use
there,
of American
I mean, all of them.
torpedoes.
Their
And I've
husbands.
read
I
all
only
kinds
want
of
to good things for them.
It's
I never
called
want to bad
Scandal
things
of
for them.
National
And their
Distress. People
kids.
should have gone to jail.
If there was a gun in my head,
The stories from the Japanese about ships coming back
my
and
like
forth
dying
with
wishes
unexploded American
were
torpedoes
that.
sticking out of the side of the
Well, it was
merchant
one.
vessels.
Then this one girl with whom I knew,
Dropped their
she has
torpedoes
sons.
right close by a
Where to fill it.
enticing
They knew how to
Japanese
do
naval
it.
target, only to watch the
Because they
torpedoes
don't.
go right under.
Like,
Well,
not
that
well.
will impact your submarine success
Like
rate.
Asher,
To fix
Federal
that,
Reserve.
by
Are you done?
mid-1944, the Americans have fixed
That's your
that.
dying wish.
And now you start to see the tonnage totals of Japanese merchant shipping skyrocket.
What was your other dying wish? What was the second one?
Submarines will account for about 60% of the Japanese merchant ships that are sent to the bottom of the sea with aircraft, allied aircraft of all kinds.
Did it involve lamb chops and milk?
Accounting for most of the rest.
Milk
But
chops.
when you look at the numbers, you get an idea of how the impact is affecting the Japanese ability to do anything. We talked about the supply problems in Burma. How do the Japanese get supplies over those mountains, through those jungles, on those terrible roads? Well, the Pacific's even worse. The Japanese, at the time of the Pearl Harbor attacks, had about 6 million tons of merchant shipping. And no nation in the Second World War has enough. Merchant shipping is always in short supply for everyone, including the United States, who can build merchant ships faster than anyone ever thought possible. Japanese removed another 3.5 million tons of merchant shipping during the war, but by December 1944, even with all that, they're down to 2,500,000
I know what
tons.
Kramer Quest sellers.
And the Americans are saving hundreds of thousands of tons a month. And the only way that number will slow down and start sinking less merchant shipping because eventually they're so successful, they run out of targets. Essentially, by late 1944, American submarines are doing to Japan.
Watch, they have some kind of like thing that like can block that no one sees it anymore. Like they just know what this image is, and it gets blocked.
An island nation of the resources that it needs to continue to fight the war.
Why?
Bring them to their knees.
Well,
But the German Navy,
I hate to say it, big doggy.
bringing Britain to its knees in
Let's see.
1942 in the Battle of
Let's
the
see
Atlantic
a more recent one.
would have involved some sort of peace arrangement, right? What if you are dropped to your knees as a
Or it's
nation,
just,
but you still
could be,
don't
because you're
give
putting
up,
out
right?
so fucking many of them.
Reasonable people that would have surrendered long ago.
These are all
What if you
zeros. Every
cripple
single
them
one of
and
these
they
is zero.
don't give in anyway?
Not a single one has a one.
Fantastic anecdote. E&W told Mother
But again, you put out like
so
40 of them,
find
so
historical anecdotes
just
that
on one
helps
account.
dramatize both where the supply problem has
No,
the Japanese
it's like-
in terms of options by October 1944, but also the mood amongst the leadership and the decision makers. And I have to say, there's a little bit of a sickness, I think, to finding
Maybe
this
this
so
should be more
interesting.
time.
But I've always been fascinated with that mood that you find. We say the extremes of the human experience, but think about the
We
people
suck your
in
dick.
Hitler's bunker.
Eat your clit.
You know, as the battle of
Like
Berlin
bubble
is
gum,
ramping
babe.
up, so Hitler during the last
Oh my
month,
god.
what it's like
Okay, so that's why you talked about jail round.
states and that
Yeah, so what's the difference between?
I'm fascinated by that.
Well,
You have
did they have like a
similar dynamic
commissary? or
going
anything
on
like
in
that?
Japan in this
Why?
time period. In this anecdote,
There was none of
you
that.
told,
Really?
brings you into
Where we were?
a conference
There was none of
between,
that.
army
There was, like,
heads and navy
you were
heads
just-
in Japan.
No one had their own fucking
These
cell.
guys are
It wasn't
putting
like
the finishing touches on their plan to
you had what they
respond
gave you.
to this great historical
Yeah.
event.
Maybe that.
Earlier, the
Oh,
general
I know.
overshadow Pelham,
Well,
right?
hold on.
The
There were
return
some
of Douglas MacArthur to the
fucking
Philippines.
tombs to that place where I'm sure that
When
shit
the
goes
Americans
on.
are going to land
Where you have your own cell.
October
But where I was,
20th,
it wasn't.
Philippine Island, Leyte,
It wasn't
and
that
it's going to be on, right?
really. Yeah. So
The Japanese
I'm sure it
know
happens,
by that
but
time that the Americans are
I mean, what I'm saying is like he saw that stuff already. I
so they
I
have
just
a
heard
plan that's been
with whom do
ready
you
for a
affiliate,
while to go
basically.
disrupt this.
And I was like, I don't know what
And they're
they're
basically going to throw in
Yeah.
everything the Japanese fleet has left in order to accomplish this goal.
So maybe it'd be a Pfizer.
But before the plan can happen, there's this conference that Toll talks about. And a general in the army, Sato, who we mentioned earlier, basically turns to the Navy and says, you know, how is this going to be worth the fuel that we're going to use for the Navy to conduct this operation, right? He says that there's a fleet of merchant ships, 6 of
See,
them
this one
carrying 60,000 tons of
is like
oil to Japan
a
right
lot,
now.
actually.
And that the fleet would basically use all of that, whereas we could use that 60,000 tons of oil to do a lot of things for the civilians, for the other war effort areas. And it's funny because 60,000 tons of
So
oil
just
a
keep
couple years
pounding
ago
that shit out.
would not have been anywhere near this important, but we understand that scarcity